Someone read the announcement aloud outside of Mamie restaurant and caused a commotion among the customers. An extra helping per week. This is pure happiness. My gosh! Doesn't that mean that those gold members can order 2 helpings of tofu pudding every day? No. I'm not hearing this, I'm not hearing. I can't stand this. I'm still a baby, when will I reach 7th tier? Majority of the customers were lamenting. After all, the 7th tier capabilities were considered advanced combat power on Norland continent, and not everyone was able to reach that tier. Although I can't be a gold member, I agree with Boss Mag rolling out this system very much. After all, there seems to be quite a number of ignorant people seeking trouble at Mamie restaurant frequently. If the restaurant and Boss Mag got into trouble, then we won't get to eat the delicacies anymore, Harrison said with a smile. I agree too. Just imagining eating 2 helpings of tofu pudding makes me feel happy. I have to train harder and quickly advance to 7th tier, a middle-aged man said seriously with fire in his eyes. I wonder if it will go into effect today? I can't wait to have 2 bowls of savory tofu pudding. Brandley followed with a smile. Everyone was discussing the new announcement excitedly. Even though they were surprised by Mag's unique idea, most of the customers welcomed and supported it, even those who couldn't reach the requirements to be a gold member. However, some customers were also worried that it would be difficult for the normal customers to get their tofu pudding while satisfying the requests of double helpings of the gold members. Yabimiya, who was standing at a side, bit into her Rugiamo and said to Mag, "Boss, will there really be 7th tier powerful beings joining the gold members system?" That's right. They're after all 7th tier powerful beings, they wouldn't do that for a helping of tofu pudding, right? Babla also said with suspicion. From today onward, I will give you an extra beef kebab for every meal. Are you willing to defend Mamie restaurant within your capabilities when it is in danger? Mag asked Babla. I'm willing. Babla blurted out almost immediately. Babla blushed after sensing some people giving a weird look. But, she pretended to be calm, and said, I won't do it for an extra beef kebab. I'll do it because I don't want to clean up the restaurant after it got thrashed. That's great. I was already going to add it on, but I didn't expect Babla to be so noble, Mag said smilingly. But... Babla raised her eyebrow and her voice rose by a pitch as she gazed at the plate of beef kebab in front of Mag. If you are going to add it on for me, I won't decline. I deserved it. There you go. Mag put a beef kebab on Babla's plate with a smile. Will this create a superpower? Shirley pondered. She had seen that announcement on her way in. On the surface, it seemed to be Mamie restaurant's self-defense means. However, if there was a high number of gold members, then they would become a group of fearsome experts. No matter what they could be asked to act upon once, many forces would think twice about provoking them. Welcome to Mamie restaurant, Mag, who came out with a smile, said loudly to the customers. From today onward, the tofu pudding supply for every meal will increase from 200 to 300 helpings. Furthermore, the extra tofu puddings ordered by the gold members will not be included in the 300 helpings. Long live Boss Mag! Boss Mag is invincible! After a moment of silence, the entrance area erupted into a loud cheer. Boss Mag, whoever tries to touch Amy or Mamie restaurant, I will crush them, Krasos said to Mag with a smile. I would like to have 2 sweet tofu puddings this morning. I shall order them right now. I would like to have 2 savory tofu puddings, Urian said from the side before he entered the restaurant. Sure, Mag replied with a smile. The promise from these 2 was a talisman of protection. Boss Mag, even though I don't eat tofu pudding, I would like to be Mamie restaurant's gold member. I will sign that letter of commitment straight away, Sargeras said with a shy smile as he touched his bald head. Mag turned around, and said, Anna, give Chief Sargeras a letter of commitment and a gold card. Anna passed a piece of paper to Sargeras, and he wrote down his name seriously. He passed it back to Anna and got the gold card from her. With Krasua and Urian taking the lead and Sargeras setting a great example, many powerful presences amongst the customers followed suit. They signed the letter of commitment and received a gold card from Anna. Mag looked at this scene with a smile. Things had gone smoother than he had expected. After the breakfast service was over, Anna placed the last letter of commitment on the counter and used Ugly Duckling to press on it. She said to Mag, "We've received 10 letters of commitment and gave out 10 gold cards this morning, Uncle Mag. You did a good job, Anna." Mag patted Anna's head with a smile. The 10 letters of commitment from powerful beings 7th tier and above included the 2 legendary great magic casters, 1 9th tier magic caster, 2 8th tier demons, 1 8th tier elf, and 4 7th tier powerhouses. There were 12 customers 7th tier and above who came for breakfast, so this take-up rate could be considered very high. These were only the customers who had come for breakfast. There would be more customers coming for lunch and dinner. If he could get the commitment from 50 powerful beings 7th tier and above, then nobody on Norland continent would dare to seek trouble at Mamie restaurant ever again. No matter how the situation evolved in the future, Mamie restaurant would be able to defend itself. As for how to utilize that one attack, that would be Mag's ultimate secret weapon. Those silly elves from Wind Forest better don't try anything stupid. Otherwise, he would let them have a taste of the foodie's wrath. Mag said to Yabimia, "Mia, I heard Zixi say that you took in an injured young lady, right?" "Yes." Yabimia nodded, and embarrassedly said to Mag, "I'm sorry, boss. I shouldn't have let others stay in the dormitory without your permission. I'm not scolding you. Saving a person is a good deed. You should be praised." Mag shook his head smilingly. He went into the kitchen and swiftly came out with an insulated lunchbox. He passed it to Mia. "There is a helping of Yangzhou fried rice, a bowl of sweet tofu pudding, and some chicken soup. You can bring them to her. But from this afternoon onward, you have to eat your share of food, and I will prepare another share for her." "Boss," Yabimia gazed at Mag with tears gathering in her eyes and threw herself into Mag's arms. Mag's arms were frozen in midair awkwardly. Then, he patted Mia's shoulders gently with a smile on his face. Uncle Mag is holding big sister Mia with an odd smile on his face, Anna mumbled quietly in a corner. "Should I tell Amy?" "Amy." In a tea house, Robert looked at Derek, who was sitting across him, concernedly. "Mr. Derek, the progress of your food tasting seems to have stopped for 3 days. Is your body unwell?" This, Derek, who was about to drink from his cup, hesitated for a moment before putting down his teacup. He embarrassedly said, "I'm not unwell. It's because I encountered a restaurant whose food was so delicious that I can't help but to go there to eat for every meal. After I finished and came out, I couldn't eat any other food anymore." Robert looked at Derek in astonishment. He was a famous food reviewer in the culinary world, and he was stopping his footsteps for one restaurant? He thought for a while before his eyes flicked open. "Is it Mamie restaurant?" "Yes, it is." So President Robert knew this restaurant too. Derek nodded. Boss Mag's culinary skills are the best in Chaos City. He was even declared the best chef by the King of Roth Empire on his birthday feast. "How can I not know him?" Robert said smilingly. But, he held back his words as he looked at Derek when he was about to say more. Derek obviously knew what Robert was trying to say. He sincerely replied, "Honestly speaking, the culinary standard of Chaos City is still a distance away from Rodus. There are even many restaurants that don't sell vegetarian food, and there is also a lack of respect for vegetarian food. They made it hard for me to find an appetizing restaurant. Therefore, if the president has a short list, please give it to me. I obviously am not able to complete the mission of trying every restaurant on the scheduled list." This, Robert seemed to be in a difficult place. The Food Association was going all out and coming up with new rules to select the really outstanding dishes and restaurants. If it was reduced to a short list before being given to Derek to review, it would differ from their original intention. However, Derek was not wrong, either. There were indeed many restaurants in Chaos City that had a nonchalant attitude toward vegetarian food. To an expert culinary reviewer like Derek, it was impractical to continue trying those subpar and awful vegetarian food. Furthermore, there also wasn't enough time to do so now. After hesitating for a while, Robert finally nodded at Derek. "All right, Mr. Derek. There will be a person handing you a new list of shops to try. You only have to try those restaurants in the new list." Derek had the best reputation and prestige amongst this year's panel of reviewers. If he could introduce more about Chaos City's delicious food in the culinary review, maybe some chefs would be attracted to come, and new energy would be injected into Chaos City's culinary world. This would have a great effect on Chaos City's culinary development. Do you know what happiness is? On Aiden Square, a white-haired old man holding a wooden staff was asking a child, who was eating sweets on a chair, with a smile. "Grandpa, I already used my last copper coin to buy the exploding fireball magic from that grandpa earlier. I don't have money to buy new ones anymore." The kid took out a spell book from behind and shook his head. Shallow. How could happiness be bought with a mere copper coin? The old man shook his head as he looked at the boy in disappointment before he moved on to the next child. In his crossbody bag, the same spell book could be seen. The old man Angus finally sold a spell book for a copper coin after pacing around Aiden Square for the entire afternoon. Today is indeed a happy day. Angus lay on a bench in a corner. He placed that copper coin in front of his eyes, and his face revealed a bright smile. Half of the teeth in his mouth were already rotten. A young man suddenly stood next to the bench, and smilingly asked, "Old mister, is it that joyful to earn one copper coin?" Angus kept the copper coin after he heard him, and sat up by supporting himself against the back of the bench. He looked at the well-dressed young man, and smilingly said, "I would feel much happier if you buy another one." "I'll buy two, then." Mag took out 2 copper coins and passed to Angus with a smile. He came out for a walk because he was feeling bored, and then he met this old man who was selling fake spell books to children. Although there was some fraudulent nature in this behavior, even a comic book cost more than 1 copper coin. Therefore, Mag wasn't too annoyed by the old man. Instead, he felt pity for this hunched old man who was only wearing an old and tattered padded jacket. If he could help it, an old man of his age wouldn't keep bending over for a mere copper coin in this cold wind. Angus accepted the copper coin. He took a spell book called Sky High Flames out from his bag and passed to Mag. He smilingly said, "A person can only buy 1 copy. Too many of this will cause you to go crazy and deranged. 1 will do too." Mag looked at the thin booklet the size of his palm. It did look like those comic books he had when he was young. He didn't insist as he kept the other copper coin away and prepared to leave. "Young man, what do you think happiness is?" Angus asked Mag with a smile. "Happiness?" Mag halted, and thought seriously for a moment before he smilingly said, "I used to think having more than enough money to spend was happiness. Now my pursuit has become higher, I only feel happy when I am with my daughter." Angus gazed at the smile on Mag's face. His eyes darkened, and he nodded. "Yes. Being together with your child is indeed the happiest. It's getting cold, old mister. You should return home now," Mag said with a smile. His finger flicked, and a gold coin fell into an open pocket silently. Then, he turned about and prepared to leave. "Home is too far. I can't go back anymore." "Young man, are you willing to hear my story?" Angus asked Mag, whose back was facing him as he shook his head. Mag turned to look at Angus. "If my son wasn't lost, he would be around your age now." Angus looked at Mag and sighed. His eyes were full of regret. Mag looked at Angus. This old man seemed to have lost everything in an instant. He felt a tug on his heartstrings. After a moment of silence, he said, he could be living happily in some place with a cute child and a nice family. A gleam lit up in Angus's eyes again. He chokingly replied, "Thank you." Mag sat next to Angus, and softly asked, "Where did you come from, old mister?" "I came from the Roth Empire, as a citizen of Rodu. I had a few houses and shops originally. 25 years ago, my 3-year-old son disappeared when he was playing at the door. My wife cried every day after our child went missing. She died the following year. I have been traveling from the north to the south all these years. I have covered the whole Roth Empire, but I still couldn't find a trace of my son." Angus's story was very long. Although his narration was a little intermittent and train of thoughts was unclear, Mag listened to him attentively the entire time with a frown. There was pity and also anger in his eyes. The kidnappers shattered a happy family. A millionaire who gained a son in his old age became a homeless man who measured the entire Norland continent with his feet. In the past, Mag didn't feel too much about the kidnappers' news, but he felt very different now. If Amy was kidnapped and taken away, he would also embark on a journey to search for her just like Angus. He would have to find her even if he had to search the entire Norland continent. Mag looked at Angus with respect in his eyes. "I have been searching in Chaos City for over a month. Even though I didn't find any information, this is a good place, a very good place." Angus looked at the children playing in the square with a bittersweet smile. "See, how cute those children are! How much fun they're having! Even in Rodu, I seldom see so many children playing together. Yes. Chaos City is indeed a good place." Mag smiled and nodded. Then, he said to Angus, "What are you planning to do after this? Are you going to continue searching in Chaos City? Or you are going somewhere else? Chaos City is too big. My brain is not as good, as I got older and I got confused. I don't know where I have searched and where I haven't after a month of searching." Angus shook his head, and helplessly said, "I have decided to go back to Roth Empire to search again. I'll be setting off shortly before the snow falls to one last place to have a look. When the snow falls, it will be time for me to go too." Mag looked at Angus in silence. He had so many words of consolation for him, but he couldn't even voice one of them. What right did he have to ask him to let it go when he had never experienced the pain himself before? "Thank you, young man, for willing to spend time listening to this old man talking about all these useless things," Angus said to Mag with gratitude. "I should be thanking you for teaching me how to be a father." Mag shook his head. "Don't be a father like me." Angus quickly shook his head. Mag got up with a smile, and said to Angus, "I have listened to your story, and now you have to eat a meal that I cooked before you can leave. Let's go, old mister. Come to my place and I'll give you a send-off." "This will not do. How can a person like me go to your place?" "No, no." Angus pointed to his old and tattered jacket as he shook his head. "I don't even bother to invite the king of Roth Empire to my place, so what does it have to do with how you dress?" Mag smiled as he picked up Angus's staff. "Let's go. It's just up ahead. Have a good meal before you depart. It will get colder in the north." Angus looked at Mag's clear eyes and then smiled. He nodded. "Then, I shall accept deferentially rather than decline courteously, and go to your place for a meal with a thick skin. A skin that could exchange for a meal is a good skin." Mag smiled. Angus followed suit and smiled. Mag led Angus to Mamie restaurant slowly. However, Angus halted when Mag pushed open the restaurant's door. Mag turned, and said to Angus, "Come in, old mister." "No, no. How can I go into such a clean and high-end restaurant? How are you going to welcome your customers if I dirty the place?" Angus shook his head continuously. He said to Mag, "Thank you, young man. I have already felt your sincerity, but I should get going. This is my restaurant. You are my only customer before it opens for business today. Speaking of it, I used to be a citizen of the Roth Empire too, Mag said smilingly. Angus looked at Mag's sincere smile, and then at the restaurant that was so clean that it seemed to be glowing. He hesitated for a long time before he nodded and went closer. He looked around after he stepped in. He didn't go in further, and instead took a seat that was closest to the door. He sat on the edge and appeared to be very uncomfortable. Have some water first. I will cook for you now. Mag placed a glass of water in front of Angus, and then went to the kitchen. Boss, he is. Ferris looked at Angus strangely. It wasn't opening hours yet, so why was Mag specially cooking for a customer? Furthermore, judging from his clothes, he wasn't a customer that could afford a meal. He is an old man with a story. I want to offer him a meal. Mag was reminded of the result given by the omniscient door when Angus first stepped in. All those late-stage incurable diseases made him realize that Angus wasn't saying nonsense earlier. It would be really hard for him to survive the winter. He didn't have a word of complaint even when he had lost all his fortunes and spent 25 years wandering around. He had always been living in regret and guilt. If he died without seeing his son who was lost for over 20 years, it would be an immense regret for Angus. With regard to this issue, Mag, too, felt a sense of intense helplessness. After all, this was a child who was lost in Rodu 25 years ago. So many years had already passed, so how would he look now, and was he even alive? These were all unknowns. Wait a second. How would he look now? Mag's eyes lit up. He said in his heart, System, are you able to draw a picture of how Angus's child would look like now based on the child's features when he was young? This is not part of my proper duties, so this system normally will not do it, the system drawled. One picture, 10,000 copper coins. Mag said calmly. Dear host, the system is very happy to be of service to you. This system has done systematic and comprehensive research on portrait drawing, and has an extremely deep understanding of human evolutionary development. If there is enough accurate information on physical characteristics, and with the collected DNA from the father, this system will be able to draw a picture that is far more accurate than any criminal portraitist's. The system's humble yet confident voice sounded. Excellent. If he is found, you will receive a reward of 1 copper coin. Mag nodded with a smile. He already had a new idea now. This is so good. A row of words floated across silently. Mag pursed his lips. The system's happiness was so cheap. Useless. However, Mag still trusted the picture that the system produced. He had watched the news on how portraitists helped to reunite long-lost relatives. With a picture, it would be much easier to look for a 30-year man than depending on Angus's description of a 5-year-old alone. After all, 25 years had passed. Angus might not even recognize the child even if he stood right in front of him. Furthermore, Mag had a platform like Mamie Restaurant. How could there be such a beautiful and exquisite restaurant in the world? Even back in Rodu, I haven't seen something like this before. Angus was appraising the restaurant with an impressed look. He had been rather well off, so he had visited all of Rodu's famous restaurants. When it came to exquisiteness and beauty, none was comparable to this Mamie Restaurant. Of course, diamonds and gold were not pretty in his eyes. They were simply shinier. But the 2 impressive gigantic crystals in Mamie Restaurant had already surpassed all the gold and gemstones. It must be expensive to dine in such a restaurant? But Angus touched the only copper coin in his pocket and sighed in his heart. He felt very uncomfortable, as if he was sitting on needles. He could only continue to drink sips of water from the glass. 15 minutes later, Mag came out with a bowl of red braised pork and a bowl of rice, and placed them in front of Angus. He smilingly said, "This is red braised pork, the new product that the restaurant is releasing today. No customers had tried it yet. Old mister, please help me with the tasting. It smells great." Angus's eyes lit up. The strong aroma of meat that greeted him smelled better than any meat that he had eaten before. He looked at the red braised pork in the black terracotta bowl. It had equal parts of fat and lean meat and looked shiny red. Even the skin looked bouncy and chewy, and it set his mouth watering. Meat. Just from this delicious aroma, I know this is a rare delicacy. But my teeth are bad, they can't chew meat for many years now. I can appreciate your kind efforts, boss. Angus sighed lightly with a little regret. It was a pity that he could only look at but not eat this scrumptious delicacy. Mag smiled. Don't jump to conclusions yet. This is a dish that is very friendly to the elderly. If you don't try it, how would you know? Would I be able to chew it? Surprise flashed through Angus's face when he heard that. He gazed at Mag and hesitated for a while before he used the chopsticks to pick up a piece of red braised pork. The cube-shaped pork had distinct skin, lean meat, and fatty meat. A piece of meat that usually made people feel greasy now looked very tempting. Angus held the meat close to his mouth and bit on the skin that was normally the most difficult to chew. Oh! The usually chewy skin was easily bitten apart by his rotten teeth without any obstruction, and the fatty meat underneath the skin melted away in his mouth. He could chew slowly without any pressure. The sweet and soft red braised pork was fatty but not greasy. A gentle bite let the sweet juice out from the meat. The scrumptious taste of the red braised pork was released perfectly at this moment. The long-lost taste of meat made Angus's taste buds cheer, and that delicious taste that he had never experienced before had him deeply mesmerized. The scrumptious red braised pork accompanied with the soft white rice chased away the coldness of winter, and let him immerse in the delicious warmth. It reminded him of some people. His dependable wife, his little son. The few years that were the happiest time in his life were spent with them. If that incident hadn't happened, all three of them would have still been in Rodu, leading a very blessed life. A tear glided down Angus's old face slowly and fell onto the ground. Angus put down his chopsticks and looked at the empty bowl in front of him. He said to Mag, "Thank you, boss. This is the most delicious food I have ever eaten. Let me get you another bowl of rice." Mag smiled as he took the bowl to the kitchen. He quickly came back with another bowl of rice. It seemed that this red braised pork had very good adaptability, even an old gentleman with bad teeth could easily eat 2 bowls of rice with. A successful experiment could be considered done. After Angus finished his second bowl of rice, the bowl of red braised pork was finished too. Not even a drop of gravy was left behind. "I have beer and meat. Let us have a drink together." Mag came out with a plate of beef kebabs and 2 big mugs of beer. He put one in front of Angus and one in front of himself. "This I make you spend again," Angus said ashamedly, but his Adam apple couldn't help but move when he stared at the beer's white foam and took in the aroma of the beer in the air. He used to be a man who had to have a nightcap before he slept. However, in the later part when he had to travel further, he couldn't afford to buy liquor anymore. It was then that he quit drinking. He hadn't drunk a single drop of liquor for more than half a year. The last time he drank was from a broken can that had beer mixed with rainwater. Mag raised his mug and gestured. Angus lifted the mug carefully with his hands and gestured to Mag before taking a little sip from the mug. The ice-cold beer that flowed down his throat tasted more refreshing than the springs in the mountains. There was a light barley fragrance and a unique aroma. It was similar to the barley beer, but this refreshing beer made one want to continue drinking more than the slightly bitter barley beer. "Nice beer," Angus praised before taking another big sip. The little greasy feeling after eating the red braised pork had disappeared totally. Although it was a little chilly to drink cold beer in winter, it only felt more refreshing to an old liquor drinker. Angus finished the big mug of beer shortly and burped. Mag poured him another mug again before saying, "Actually, I'm also a portraitist, old mister. If you trust me, maybe you can tell me your child's features and I will draw you a picture of how he may look like now. Having a picture with you when you are searching will increase the success rate." "Really?" Angus looked at Mag with surprise. "Yes. Mag nodded. My child. Angus began to get lost in his memories before he began to describe the physical characteristics of the child that was lost 25 years ago intermittently. Mag followed the system's instructions and guided him along in his remembrance. He tried to restore his actual appearance, and not the image that lived in Angus's imagination. There is a mole slightly toward the left in the center of his brow. There is a scar in the shape of a crescent on the back of his head. His name was Beck Barzil. Mag began to confirm the crucial information. Ding! Information collection completed. Ding! Gene sampling completed. Entering into the phase of analyzing and painting. Based on the genetic mutation rate, the system will draw up 3 possible appearances and provide 3 directional views. The system's voice sounded in Mag's mind. Well done. I'll give you 1 copper coin as a reward, Mag said with satisfaction. It's this system's honor to serve you. This system would try its best to provide a better service for you. The system's excited and fawning voice appeared again. It is not a bother at all. Mag shook his head with a smile before he walked upstairs. He retrieved 3 stacks of pictures from his wardrobe. The system had sent them to the wrong place. The pictures resembled color photos closely, but in order to look like they were drawn, they were oil paintings, actually. The man in the 3 pictures looked similar, but there were slight differences in the shape of his face and features. He looked rather handsome with the mole in the middle left of his brows and the crescent-shaped scar. He didn't look like everyone else. Beside the frontal view, the system also drew out the left and right profile for each picture. He most likely didn't come to Mamie restaurant before. I don't have an impression of him. Mag stared at those 3 pictures for a while and then shook his head. He asked in his heart, System, out of these 3 pictures, which one has the highest probability to look the most like him now? According to the comparison done by this system on 100 million copies of human genetic samples, the probability that he would turn out like the middle picture is 95%. The other 2 pictures were just supplementary, the system replied. This one, then. Mag threw the other 2 sets of pictures into the trash bin. He kept 1 picture in his apron pocket before he brought another one downstairs. Angus had finished his 2nd mug of beer, and he didn't touch most of the beef kebabs on the plate. He kept looking at the staircase with an anxious gaze. Did this grandpa lose his child? It's so sad. Anna looked at Angus with pity from the kitchen. Yes. Ferris nodded too before she curiously said, Boss only listened to how he described his child at the age of 5. Could Boss really draw how he looks like now? Mag came down, and Angus stood up immediately. This could be how he looks like now. Mag passed the picture to Angus directly. Angus received the picture with shaking hands. His tears began to fall after just taking 1 look. The young man in the picture looked 70 to 80% like him when he was young. His eyes were exactly like the child in his memory. He could confirm that this was his child with just a single look. Thank you so much. This is my child. This really is my child. Angus bowed deeply at Mag. Words couldn't describe his gratitude. Uncle Mag really drew how that child looks like now. He's awesome. Anna looked at Mag reverently. Yes, and he did it so fast. It only took him a moment to do it. Ferris looked astonished too. Mag reached out to help Angus up. He smilingly said, Don't mention it. Take this picture and go ask the city lord's castle for help. They would provide you with a place to stay and some food for the time being. As for whether they will conduct a widespread search for you, I am not very sure about that. At the same time, I will put up a missing person notice at my restaurant's entrance. I will also inform you immediately if I have any news. Thank you, thank you. Angus kept repeating this phrase to Mag. I wish every child who is forced to leave their home can find their way back home soon. Mag shook his head and smiled. Angus managed to calm down after a while, and kept that picture carefully. He turned and saw that a long line was already forming outside of the restaurant. He hastily said, "The customers are coming. I cannot affect boss's business. I shall leave right now." "You don't have to hurry. It's not time for business yet," Mag consoled him. "I couldn't pay for this meal after eating such delicious food cooked by boss. I am really ashamed." Angus looked at the empty bowl on the table with an apologetic look. "No, you could." Mag shook his head, and smilingly said, "This meal cost a total of 1 copper coin." Angus was a little stunned before he smiled. He reached in and took out 2 copper coins and placed them in Mag's hand. "1 copper coin is for the meal, the other copper coin is to show my respect for the delicious food." "Thank you. This is the best compliment I had today," Mag said smilingly as he kept both coins. Even though 1 copper coin was not much, no customer had ever used half of their fortune as a tip. "I am Angus. How may I address you?" Angus asked Mag as he was sending him out at the door. "You may call me Boss Mag like everyone," Mag said smilingly. "Thank you, Boss Mag." Angus bowed again before leaving slowly. Why is a customer leaving after his meal when the restaurant is not open yet? Boss Mag is sending him out personally. Could he be some big shot? The customers in the line were discussing curiously. This wasn't a common sight. "There will be a release of a new dish this afternoon, red braised pork." Mag didn't explain, but instead he told his customers about the new dish smilingly. "Wow! You are too outstanding, Boss Mag. Another new dish. Although I don't know what method of braising is red braise, it sounds very delicious." A commotion exploded amongst the customers. They were all excited beyond description. Mag went in with a smile before he went upstairs to write the missing person notice and stick on the picture. Then, he went down and pasted that missing person notice at the door. Although it was half an hour before the opening hours, there were already more than 100 people in the line. All of them were looking at Mag's actions curiously. "Dear customers, I have a favor to ask from you all. This is a missing person notice." An old man from Rodu had wandered around Norland continent for 25 years in search of his child, who was kidnapped by human traffickers 25 years ago. He is now in Chaos City. This could be how the child looks like now. There is also some basic information about him. If anyone can provide crucial information or find him directly, this restaurant will provide 1 set, a luxurious buffet set meal for 2. Every dish on Mamie Restaurant's menu will be free and unlimited. The 2 people shall utilize it together once, Mag said to the customers loudly. There was a moment of silence outside Mamie Restaurant before a commotion burst out again. My heavens! Did I hear it correctly? Every dish will be free and unlimited. This is the ultimate super reward. Including the tofu pudding? If it includes the tofu pudding, I will marry anyone who finds him and brings me along, a pretty woman screamed. All right, I have found the method to find my significant other. The new notice that Mag put up caused quite a commotion amongst the customers because the reward was simply too attractive. All the items in Mamie Restaurant would be free flow and free of charge, including tofu pudding. Almost all the customers going into the restaurant would take a look and try to remember the person in the picture. Even though they didn't know him, what if they met him on the road one day? There were even people taking down crucial information with a notebook. They seemed to have the idea of setting up a search party. Yabimiya and the gang also found out what Mag was doing during their lunch. They saw the customers reading the missing person notice seriously, and all of them thought, Boss is really a kind man. Mamie Restaurant seems to be very famous recently. I heard it has already overtaken Dukas Restaurant as Chaos City's top restaurant. But I wonder if it lives up to its reputation. After all, the roast pig that Beat made was rather impressive. The ranking of the meat dishes would have to follow according to their actual tastes. An elderly man with white hair looked at the signboard outside of Mamie Restaurant before he followed the crowd in. Avis, who had left Chaos City for Rodu at the age of 16, became an apprentice chef at Reed Restaurant, and continued working there for 50 years before becoming a sous chef. Reed Restaurant was in the top 5 restaurants in Rodu. It was very popular and had a great reputation. The roast pig was the signature dish of Reed Restaurant, and was considered the best pork dish in Reed Restaurant. Beat had been an apprentice in the Reed Restaurant for 10 years, and he was his mentor. Beat later left Reed Restaurant. He returned to Chaos City and became the head chef of Dukas Restaurant. He made Dukas Restaurant the best restaurant in Chaos City with the roast pig. Avis rather liked his disciple, Beat, who was quite talented. He was the one who gave him the advice to set up Dukas Restaurant then. Rodu was a very hierarchical place. He had spent 50 years, and was the best chef of Reed Restaurant at roasting pig, but he could only be a sous chef at most. Therefore, he didn't want to see Beat, who also hailed from Chaos City, waste his whole life there and never get to the position where he could be the one to make the final decisions. He ended his career as a chef in Reed Restaurant using his health as an excuse a while back. He had also rejected the other restaurants' invitations with a high salary. He decided to return to Chaos City to enjoy his retirement as his children and their families were all living in Chaos City. Robert had gone to invite him to be the judge for the meat dishes ranking. He only agreed after listening to Robert's ideals of reviving Chaos City's culinary scene. Although Beat was his disciple, Avis didn't tell him about him being the judge. And in order not to affect his judgment, he had placed Dukas Restaurant as the last on his list. The first restaurant he picked for that afternoon was Mamie Restaurant. He was a little surprised with its popularity. The line outside it was even longer than the one at Reed Restaurant. However, the popularity wasn't going to affect his judgment, because he was only going to review the meat dishes. A restaurant only needed one scrumptious dish to be popular, for example, like the Reed Restaurant. Actually, there was another reason that Avis had agreed to Robert's invitation, and that was the boss of this restaurant, Mr. Mag. As the sous chef of Reed Restaurant, he had naturally been present at the birthday banquet of the King of the Roth Empire. Reed's roast pig had taken the title of the best dish of the court banquet thrice. He was in charge of the roasting twice out of the 3 times they won. Hence, he had only viewed Chef Bellman as his competitor for the court banquet's best dish. But nobody had expected that the court banquet's best dish would be won by an unknown young chef. The king hadn't even tasted the roast pig coming after. That was the trigger that caused him to leave Reed. This was a huge setback to him. Yet, he was also very curious when Chaos City had such an impressive young chef like him. It made him want to go back to have a look. Avis glanced at the missing person notice at the door when he entered. Helping a vagrant to look for his long-lost son? This gave him a different perception of this young chef. As he was early, there were still seats available when he followed the crowd into the restaurant. He sat down and began to appraise the restaurant. Compared to the 4 stories tall Reed Restaurant, this Mamie Restaurant was not big at all. In fact, it wasn't even as big as a single story of Reed. But the restaurant's decoration made a person feel very comfortable. The original wooden tables and chairs even had the same markings when he observed closer. There were nice green plants hanging on the carved railings which made one feel warm in this early winter. The murals on the walls were rather elegant as they portrayed the different species very intricately. What made Avis even more astonished was that the restaurant not only didn't segregate the zones, it didn't even segregate the tables. Demons and elves were sitting at the same table. Orcs and humans were sitting side by side. Even in Chaos City, such scenes were not usual. It seems like this boss really has something up his sleeves, Avis thought. Then, he flipped open the menu on the table, and the descriptions with pictures made his eyes widen. He was surprised at the same time. The cheapest snack on the menu cost 200 copper coins. The Peking duck even cost 2,000 copper coins a helping. The roast pig in Reed Restaurant only cost 5,000 copper coins, and that was meant for 6 people. Furthermore, Reed Restaurant was a 100-year-old enterprise. How could this 6-month-old restaurant compare to it? The spicy grilled fish got the Best Dish award at the court banquet, but this dish should be considered under the seafood category. There were also the braised chicken and rice and pepper steak at the court banquet. The braised chicken and rice has soup in it. I wonder if it is listed under the soup category. In this case, today I shall try the pepper steak, beef kebabs, Peking duck. Avis looked at the dish that was marked with the red words new item under the meat category. He mumbled, "Why don't I try this red braised pork first?" Creation of a new item is the ultimate test of a chef's capabilities. "May I take your order?" Yabimiya asked with a smile when she came to Avis's table. Avis wasn't in a hurry to order, and instead he asked Yabimiya, "May I ask what kind of pork is this red braised pork made of?" "This red braised pork dish is made with the meat of the fiery pig," Yabimiya answered smilingly. "That's a 5th-tier magic beast. And it's only found on the Red Dragon Island and nowhere else. Oh my! If I remember correctly, the red dragons love to eat fiery pig, right? How does Boss Mag do it? Those giant dragons who came to make trouble and were crushed were red dragons, right?" The customers suddenly lost their cool after they heard Yabimiya. Surprise also appeared on Avis's face. This red braised pork, which was priced at 800 copper coins, actually used a 5th-tier magic beast as the main ingredient. Even the roast pig at Reed restaurant only used the domesticated 1st-tier black mountain pig. For them to use the 5th-tier magic beast, a VIP customer would have to make a reservation before they would purchase and cook it. Pork. Then, I shall have a helping of red braised pork and a helping of pepper steak. Please serve them in the reverse order. Avis closed the menu. This review was going to be done anonymously. If he ordered too much and wasn't able to finish, it would be very obvious. Besides, he already estimated that he wouldn't be able to finish these 2 dishes. "Sure, please wait for a moment." Yabimiya nodded and proceeded to the next customer. While waiting for the dishes to be served, Avis was also observing the restaurant. This Mamie restaurant, which was capable of accommodating over 100 people of different species, was extraordinarily quiet when compared to normal restaurants. Even the dwarves and orcs, who were famous for their loud voices, were also speaking gently in the restaurant. That was quite a sight. Dishes and dishes were sent out of the kitchen. Avis gazed toward the kitchen. Although separation was done for the kitchen, it wasn't complete. Instead, it was separated by a huge crystal wall. The customers outside could see all the actions going on in the kitchen. This was something Avis had never seen before. To a chef, his culinary skills were his life. They even would keep some of their skills from their disciples so nobody would know all of their culinary skills. However, Mag had opened up his kitchen, which meant showing the entire cooking process to his customers. He was so confident. Wasn't he afraid that people could steal his techniques? Avis thought curiously, and couldn't help staring at Mag's back. 3 stoves, a grill, a big pot, 2 ovens. He was just like a spinning top that kept moving in between the kitchenware. He was flipping the fried rice on the stove, the beef kebabs were sizzling on the grill, the baked fish was slowly turning golden brown in the oven. Everything seemed so smooth, and there wasn't any hint of busyness. This is an expert. Avis stared for a long time before he praised Mag in his heart. He was a chef, so he understood how important focus was to a chef. In the back kitchen of Reed restaurant, there were over 100 chefs and apprentices who all had their specific jobs so they could serve the food to 1,000 customers. But over here, Mag had to prepare food for 300 to 400 customers alone. That was simply unbelievable. He wouldn't have believed it if he hadn't seen it for himself. But will the food cooked in this manner be delicious? Avis had some doubts in his heart. Everything has its pros and cons. Something must be given up when they choose to speed up. That's for sure. Your red braised pork. Please enjoy it. Yabimiya placed a helping of red braised pork and a bowl of rice in front of Avis. This aroma. Avis, who was staring at Mag, snapped his attention back. He looked at the red braised pork in front of him in disbelief. This rich aroma was even more impactful than the roast pig he made. The block of meat with layers of fat and lean meat was shiny red. It didn't look greasy at all. Instead, it looked very enticing. The white pork meat usually seems unappetizing, especially the fatty part and the skin, which look very greasy, but he has used spices and seasonings to make the pork's color look enticing. This is similar to roast pig, but the roast pig's color isn't as good as this. Color, 5 stars. I wonder what spices did he use to cook this? It actually made the pork give off such enticing aroma that even surpassed the roast pig. Aroma, 5 stars. The color and aroma are both excellent. I wonder what it tastes like? Avis thought before he picked a piece of red braised pork and put it in his mouth. After biting gently with his teeth, Avis's eyes lit up instantly. The skin and fatty meat were definitely the main focus here. The soft and chewy skin was just of the right texture, and the fatty meat melted away with just a gentle bite. The sweet and soft taste was simply indescribable, and it made Avis raise his eyebrows. Also, the lean meat was the perfect complement. It was lean but not dry at all. This mouthful was fatty but not greasy, sweet but not sticky, and rich but not salty. It was simply a delicacy out of this world. After swallowing that piece of red braised pork, Avis only felt that his taste buds were still cheering for it. The long-lost satisfaction and anticipation made him amazed. He had once believed that he had already reached the pinnacle of cooking pork. Even if there were better chefs than him, they could never surpass him at cooking pork. Nobody could make a tastier roast pig than him. But now, after tasting this red braised pork, his thinking was totally subverted. He had never heard anyone could cook pork like this. Although it was not roasted, the red braised pork had exceeded his expectations and imagination in the aspects of spice configurations, cooking techniques, and innovation. It blew him away. Even though his pride after roasting pigs for 50 years made him unwilling to accept his failure, as a true chef, he chose to follow his heart. The taste and texture are equally great. 5 stars. Avis thought as he stared at the bowl of red braised pork in front of him. Then he looked at Mag, who was working hard in the kitchen, and a deep sense of respect began to rise in his heart. He was just one person doing everything by himself and cooking for so many customers, yet he produced such an amazing delicacy. Furthermore, this was just a new released item and a completely innovative pork cooking method. A chef like him deserved to receive the court banquet's best award. Truly deserving. Avis ate a mouthful of rice. The soft and fluffy rice covered over the tiny bit of greasiness in the red braised pork, and made it even more scrumptious. A mouthful of red braised pork with a mouthful of rice. It was simply impossible to stop. The distance between Beat and him is a huge mountain. One that even I can't overcome. 10 minutes later, Avis stared at the empty bowls in front and sighed in his heart. This red braised pork is simply too delicious. I've got to control myself. I had already put on January 5 kg this month, so if I continue to put on weight, I'll be 50 kilograms. A teenage girl stared at the 3 pieces of red braised pork in her empty rice bowl and hesitated for a long time. Finally, she raised her hand. Give me another bowl of rice, please. This has totally subverted all I thought about pork. Even the roast pig at Duca's restaurant didn't bring me such a surprise. It's fat but not greasy. It's a fragrant, sweet, and tender soft delicacy. It's simply too scrumptious. A middle-aged man sighed as he put down the bowl that he licked clean. Avis listened to the customers' praises. If he'd been at another restaurant, he would have thought they were people engaged by the boss, but after tasting that delicious red braised pork, he only felt that their reviews were too superficial and lacked actual power. Red braised pork, it's divine. Soon, the black pepper steak was served. Avis, who was still submerged in the scrumptiousness of the red braised pork, soon fell into the delicious trap of the black pepper steak. As Avis looked at the signboard after exiting Mamie restaurant, he emotionally said, he's indeed the chef who received the court banquet's best dish award. He really got what it takes. Then he turned and left. That was all that afternoon. He was already stuffed. The golden opinions that the customers heaped on red braised pork made Mag feel successful. He felt that all the suffering he had gone through in the test field for the god of cookery was worth it. Bringing the best delicacies to the customers was also a thing that made one feel blessed. After the lunch service, Mag wrote 2 more missing person notices by hand, and then proceeded to the Food Association and the City Lord's Castle. Very soon, the missing person notices appeared on the notice boards of the City Lord's Castle and Delicious Cuisine rankings. The notice board at the City Lord's Castle was a column that the people of Chaos City paid a lot of attention to on the normal days. With Eden Square being the shopping district with the highest foot traffic in Chaos City, the magic notice board that stood in the middle of the square naturally gained plenty of attention. For that period of time, this missing person notice became a hotly discussed topic in the streets of Chaos City. Those who were not familiar with Mamie Restaurant lamented the father's determination even after 25 years. They spread the news as they were touched. A citywide search exercise began to proceed quietly, driven by 3 missing person notices. It was getting late at night. An unknown blacksmith in a small lane at the north of the city still had a dim oil lamp lit. A hunchbacked old blacksmith removed his dirty apron and put a padded jacket he took from the side. He rubbed his hands and shouted into the shop, "Hada, let's wrap up. Master is bringing you out for a drink. We need a nightcap on such a cold night." "Okay," a hoarse voice answered from inside. After a series of banging sounds, a fit and muscular young man emerged from the blacksmith shop. He'd look like a perfectly positive and handsome young man if not for the 2 missing fingers on his left hand and crippled right calf. He still looked positive as he smiled at the old blacksmith even when he had a few streaks of charcoal on his face. "Let's go, master. It's cold today, you got to wear more." The young man called Hada wrapped the old blacksmith up with his own clothes. He was only wearing a thin shirt. The old blacksmith walked slowly as he calmly said, "I don't feel warmer even when I wear more clothes. I most likely won't get through this winter. Guard this shop after I'm gone. This shop is all I have in my life. I will rest assured passing it to you." "Master," Hada followed up chokingly. Although he was crippled, it didn't show in his gait. His right leg quickly followed as he put his left leg forward. If one didn't look closely, he looked just like normal people. "Silly boy, don't be sad. All humans will die. The king of the Roth Empire may not even live to my age. Am I proud?" the old blacksmith said with a smile. "Master, it was you who rescued me from the streets, fed me, and taught me to be a blacksmith. You have to live for a few more years so I can pay you back," Hada said chokingly. "It was your own good luck to be able to escape from that place then. I happened to see you lying by my doorstep. It was so cold, and I couldn't bear to see a young child like you freezing to death, so I brought you home. I don't have any children, and you have kept me company for all these years. You have saved me by getting a doctor to me a few times. You don't have to feel that you owe me anything," the old blacksmith said, waving his hand. Hada shook his head with tears in his eyes, and said, "You taught me how to be a human, gave me a new life. Those people broke my leg and chopped off my fingers. If you hadn't taught me how to make a living, I would have still been begging at some corner. Therefore, I do owe you, master, and I won't be able to repay all of your kindness in this life." The old blacksmith halted, but he didn't turn his head when he said, "Silly boy. After I'm gone, throw out whatever should be thrown out in the house. Pack up nicely and marry the tailor's Rachel and have a few kids. She's a nice girl. That's all I expect from you." Hada's mouth trembled. Finally, he nodded, and said, "Okay. All right, let's not talk about this. Let us have a drink." The old blacksmith continued onward. At the start of the lane, there was an open-air stall which still had its lights on. Steam came out from the pot, and one could smell the aroma of mutton soup from a distance away. After the blue suede fashion released its windbreaker, it took Chaos City by storm. Hundreds of windbreakers sold out in a day. It created a trend of wearing windbreakers in the aristocratic circle. And blue suede had also become the clothing store that was the most discussed among the ladies. Clothing store. What an unusual name. In the past, the rich people's clothes had to be custom-made to measure. In their eyes, only the poor would wear those poorly made and even unfitting clothes. But now, in order to snap up a piece of blue suede's clothing, the noble ladies and the wealthy girls didn't care whether the size fitted them anymore. They wouldn't mind altering it themselves after they bought it. The clothes manufacturing factory of blue suede fashion was separated from the shop totally. The factory located to the east of the city had already had its tailors and apprentices enter into a two-shifts system because of the high order demands. As the wages were 2 times higher than what they could earn custom-making clothes for others, and they didn't have to fawn over customers, do repeated alterations, and worry about orders, but simply follow the drawing and do their jobs to get a rewarding salary, all the tailors were highly motivated. Benjamin used to be an old tailor from the north of the city. He couldn't earn much being a tailor to the poor. A while ago, an old friend recommended him to try at blue suede. Because of his good skills, he was selected, and he brought his daughter along to this factory. The boss of this factory was a good person. Not only was she pretty, she was also generous. After verifying his skills, she gave him the same pay as the rest of the tailors, 10,000 copper coins per month. Even his daughter, Rachel, was able to get 3,000 copper coins as her pay. He hadn't dared to expect that initially. Furthermore, the work wasn't very tiring. Although it was a 2-shift system, there was plenty of resting time every day, and meals were provided. They were even better than those they had for their New Year celebration. He had already decided to work here until he couldn't move anymore so he could prepare a nice dowry for Rachel and marry her off to a nice family. The master tailors were in charge of the main cloth-making procedures, and the female workers were responsible for sewing the corners and removing excess threads in the adjacent workshop in a more relaxed environment. A female worker finished her job, and while waiting for new excess threads to be removed, she softly whispered, "Have you heard? There's a restaurant boss from a restaurant called Mamie Restaurant who put up a missing person notice today." The City Lord's Castle and Food Association forwarded it too. The female workers who weren't very busy looked at her curiously. Only a pretty female worker who was sewing the corners in a corner remained unmoved. "Really? That's impressive. Who is that boss?" A female worker at the side couldn't quite believe it. The other female workers had almost similar expressions. "Of course, it's true. I couldn't sleep this afternoon, so I went for a walk in Aden Square. I saw it with my own eyes." The female worker swore before she mysteriously continued, "By the way, do you know that restaurant is really impressive? The cheapest item on the menu there already costs 200 copper coins. The most expensive item even costs 2,000 copper coins. If anyone finds this person, he or she can bring one person along with him or her to eat anything they like on the menu for free." My heavens, 2,000 copper coins for a helping of food. That's too expensive? Are there really people who can afford it? A female worker exclaimed. "Yes. I can only afford one helping with 1 month of my pay." All the female workers were astonished. "Even though we can't afford it, I deliberately went to have a look at the restaurant's entrance. There was a long line of more than 100 people." That female worker was satisfied that the others looked so shocked. Then, she smiled mysteriously, and said, "Furthermore, can you all guess whom I saw?" "Whom?" All the female workers' interest was piqued. "I saw our boss, Miss Gloria." She, too, was lining up. The female worker smiled. "The delicacies that even Miss Gloria has to line up to eat? Now I believe that it costs 2,000 copper coins for a helping. Yes. Even someone as beautiful, graceful, and rich like Miss Gloria, hey. I wish I can go to that restaurant for a meal too. All the female workers looked wistful. The 2,000 copper coins price made it impossible for them. They needed to support their family with 2,000 to 3,000 of monthly pay, so they couldn't spend it carelessly. Cynthia, share with us quickly. What kind of person is he looking for? Maybe it's someone we know. If we find him, we will be able to eat the same kind of food as Miss Gloria, a female worker said excitedly. All the workers looked toward that worker called Cynthia. I did memorize that, Cynthia said a little smugly. The missing person notice said, an old man from Rodil was looking for his son who was lost 25 years ago. That child was called Beck Barzil. He had a black mole in between the middle left of his eyes and a crescent-shaped scar at the back of his head. Ah! The female worker, who was embroidering the clothes in the corner, jerked, and the needle pricked her fingers. The pain made her cry out. Her eyes were widened as if she heard something unbelievable. Are you all right, Rachel? Cynthia stood up and walked over to that pretty worker. She saw that her finger was still bleeding, so she rapidly removed her finger away from the clothes, and nervously said, Why are you careless, Rachel? This is not a serious cut, but our pay will be docked if we dirty the clothes. Rachel didn't care about her finger. She stood up immediately and grabbed Cynthia's hands agitatedly. Cynthia, you said that old man came from Rodu? The child was lost for 25 years, and he had a black mole in between his eyebrows. Why yes. Cynthia nodded perplexedly. She looked at the agitated Rachel, and suddenly her eyes lit up. Oh my! Rachel, do you know that person? Rachel didn't answer her. Instead, she asked, Where can I see that missing person notice? You can see it at the City Lord's Castle gates and the Food Association's magical screen on ranking in Aiden Square, Cynthia replied. She then curiously asked, Do you really know a person like this? Who is it? I am going out for a while. Rachel put the clothes aside and jogged to the entrance. Hey, Rachel, it's still operation hours. Where are you going? Cynthia shouted loudly, and watched Rachel disappear out of the door. She dejectedly said, What's this? Still saying we're good sisters? She just ran away without saying a word. I'm only curious. What's so great about that meal? Rachel. Benjamin, who was in the next workshop, heard Cynthia's voice. He was stunned for a minute before he walked toward the door. He stepped outside just in time to see Rachel's back disappear at the end of the lane. Benjamin frowned as he thought, This lass, where is she going so late in the night? He returned to the workshop again and continued sewing the clothes. Rachel was always an obedient child since she was young. She had never made him worry before. She would definitely come back later. A dainty figure ran all the way from the streets at the north of the city to Aiden Square. She stood below the magical screen and panted as she raised her head to look at the missing person notice on it. There, she saw that picture with familiar eyes and features. Rachel teared up immediately. She cried as she chokingly said, Hada. Your father is here, looking for you. Barzil, so Barzil was your surname. You remembered correctly. I have to tell him this news. He will be so happy. Rachel wiped away her tears, then turned, and ran toward the north of the city. Her clothes were soaked with her sweat. It was bone-chilling when the cold wind blew, but Rachel was full of smiles. The little cripple who grew up with her, took a beating for her, and strove for her. The man she loved deeply. His father was finally here to look for him. It had been so many years. Although he had never said it, she knew he would still miss home. That home which he couldn't even remember very well. Hada. Hada. Open the door now, Hada. Rachel knocked hard on a door that was rather old. The door creaked open, and Hada came out. He looked at the sweaty Rachel nervously. What's up, Rachel? Something happened? Are you all right? Silly man, I'm fine. Rachel shook her head. She said to Hadda with tears in her eyes, Hadda, your father is here, searching for you. He's really here. Don't be wishy-washy. Hadda, who was about to put the padded jacket that he was wearing onto Rachel's shoulders, froze on the spot. He looked at the teary-eyed Rachel, and hoarsely asked, What did you say, Rachel? I said your father's here looking for you, silly. I saw the missing person notice that he put up. The man in the picture drawn was you. He really came to look for you, Rachel said smilingly as she wiped her tears away. Hadda shook his head and took a step back. He confusedly said, how could this be? It's been so many years, how could he still be looking for me? You must have seen wrongly. It couldn't be me, how could I have seen wrongly? The missing person notice said there was a black mole near the left eyebrow and a crescent-shaped scar at the back of the head. You have all of these. Rachel grabbed Hadda's hands, looking into his eyes, and said, furthermore, he came from Rodu and the child was lost 25 years ago. Didn't you say you remembered your home was in Rodu? Barzil is your surname. You remembered correctly. Your name is Beck Barzil. He really is your father, and he's looking for you. Hadda's eyes widened and his body started to shake uncontrollably. Veins on his forehead began to pop up too. Hadda? Hadda, are you all right? Rachel looked at Hadda and backed off a step in fear. Hadda now looked a little scary, and wasn't the silly guy who laughed at her in her memory. No. He is not my father. My father is long dead. I don't have a father, and I didn't come from Rodu. I am not called Beck Barzil. I am Hadda. I only have master, no father. Hadda shouted angrily and grasped his hair with a twisted expression. Hadda, Rachel stared at Hadda. Suddenly, she rushed forward and held Hadda tightly. Tears flowed down her faces and she began to sob. Hadda heard Rachel's crying, and he calmed down gradually. He looked at Rachel, who was crying in his arms and soaking his clothes with her tears, and felt all his strength had left his body. He slumped to the floor and sobbed with an empty look in his eyes. Why is he only looking for me now? Why did he only think of looking for me after 25 years? If he had come to look for me earlier, my fingers wouldn't have gotten chopped off by them, my leg wouldn't have been broken, either. If he had come to look for me earlier, I wouldn't have been a cripple, and I would have been able to ask your father for your hand properly. Why now? Rachel hugged Hadda, who was crying like a child, tightly. She, too, was crying non-stop. She only held his face in her hands after he had calmed down. Looking into his eyes, she said, Silly man, I don't care how you look. As long as you ask my father for my hand, I will marry you. I don't need his approval. Hadda looked at Rachel with tears in his eyes. He hugged Rachel tightly in his arms, and said with a choked voice, Sorry, Rachel, sorry. I need to take care of Master now. He gave me a second lease of my life. I should stay with him, it's all right. If you really don't want to meet him, then don't. I respect your choice. Rachel shook her head. She could feel his pain and desperation just now. If their roles were reversed, she, too, might not know how to face that father. The old blacksmith suddenly appeared at the doorway with his padded jacket slung over his shoulders, and said to Hadda in a deep voice, Why don't you meet him? At our age, if we don't get to see our biological son before we die, we definitely cannot die in peace. Hadda looked at the old blacksmith. Master, Hadda, I know you are filial, but he is still your father. Furthermore, how did you know he hadn't gone looking for you for the past 25 years? Norland continent is huge, and he is only an ordinary person. How would he know that the human traffickers brought you to Chaos City? The old blacksmith interrupted Hadda. Why don't you meet him and ask him personally? Hadda's expression became a little hesitant. Go and see him tomorrow. Even if you have found your father, I am still your master. If you are still willing to take over this blacksmith shop, it is still yours. You're still responsible for burying me after I die." The old blacksmith waved his hand. After taking a look at Rachel with a smile, he said, "Be like a man. Don't be wishy-washy." Then, he went in. Hadda remained seated in a daze. "Hadda, are you willing to meet him?" Rachel asked softly. Hadda's eyes became focused again. After a moment of hesitation, he nodded. "Yes, I'll go." "Good, then I will go with you tomorrow." Rachel smiled, and then she sneezed uncontrollably. "You have sweated quite a bit. You are going to catch a chill when the wind blows. I'll send you home first." Hadda quickly covered Rachel with his padded jacket. Then he stood up and walked toward a small courtyard, hugging Rachel in his arms. "I'm fine. It's just a sneeze. I just need a change of clothes and sleep." Rachel shook her head and smiled. Hadda shook his head and insisted, "No, I will make you some ginger soup. Drink that before you sleep. Today, my father is working the night shift, so he's not home." "That's great. I can send you into the house, then I'll go home to cook the ginger soup for you." "Blockhead. You are really a blockhead." The old blacksmith sighed after he saw Hadda came back with an empty bowl. The missing person notice had gained some traction after a day, and attracted quite a bit of attention in Chaos City. Mag had never imagined that this one-kind act had unintentionally advertised Mamie restaurant to the entire city. It made the customers lining up for breakfast double in number. Hence, Mag had to magnify the menu, make it into a stand, and put it at the entrance directly so those people who were simply curious would go away by themselves. The pricing on the menu had a very strong filter effect. Of course, this had also made the missing person notice even more talked about. An unlimited buffet for two would at least cost 10,000 copper coins, right? That was quite an enticement. Benjamin walked to his small courtyard quickly after he finished his night shift. He mumbled to himself, "This lass, Rachel, didn't come back for the whole night. Did she go home first because she was not feeling well?" The door opened from inside just as he was about to open it. "Father!" Rachel was stunned after she saw Benjamin at the door. Then, she walked past him and jogged out. "I am going out for a while." "This lass." Benjamin looked at Rachel, who disappeared down the corner of the lane. He stomped his foot, and then went into his courtyard. "It's him. It has to be him." Rachel poked her head out to look at her closed courtyard's door before walking over the other courtyard gingerly, and knocked on the door. "We should set off now, Hadda." The door opened rapidly. Hadda, who was wearing a padded jacket, stood at the door. He looked at Rachel as he scratched his head, and said, "Rachel, what do you think of me dressing like this? It looks good." Rachel smiled and nodded. Then, she put a straw hat on Hadda's head. After taking a quick look at him, she took his hand, and said, "Let's go. Let's set off now." "But, why am I wearing this straw hat?" Hadda followed her out and pointed at the straw hat perplexedly. "This hat is going to be very helpful." Rachel smiled, but she wasn't planning to tell Hadda why. "All right." Hadda didn't continue to ask. His smile grew wider as he looked at his hand in Rachel's. However, he quickly hesitantly said, "But, what should I say when I see him later?" "You have never thought about what to say to him when you see him before?" Rachel asked Hadda. "No." Hadda shook his head. "Once, they hit me on my head with a wooden club, and I forgot many things about my childhood after that. I even forgot what he looked like. I only remember the name Barzil." Rachel squeezed Hadda's hand tight as her heart ached for him. She shook her head, and said, "It's all right. You will know what to say when you see him." In front of the magical screen in the center of Aiden Square, Angus looked at the missing person notice on the screen in a daze. If he hadn't met Mag, he most probably would not have known how Beck looked like as a grown-up, and could have never put up such an attention-catching missing person notice in the busiest location in Chaos City. There were so many people in Chaos City, so maybe Beck was right here. Or he could be in a town in the Roth Empire. He didn't know, but he was still waiting hopefully. He had made it through 25 years. He could wait for another few more days. But, for the past 25 years, he had never felt the warmth and concern that he had felt in the past 2 days. Be it Mag, who was willing to help him despite that they had only just met, or the city lord's castle which provided him with food and lodging, they provided the concern that he had never felt in 25 years. I shall go and have a look at Mamie restaurant. I wonder if Beck would be found. Angus leaned on his staff and walked toward Mamie restaurant. No long after, a young couple came to the magical screen. Rachel pointed at the magical screen, and whispered, "See, Hadda. Doesn't he look exactly like you?" Hadda, who raised his head, was totally stunned. The picture on the screen looked exactly like him. His eyes became moist as he read the descriptions. It had been 25 years. He had long forgotten how his father looked, but he still remembered how he looked when he was young. "Let's go to that restaurant." Rachel held onto Hadda's hand tightly and led him toward Mamie restaurant. Hadda was quiet on the way there. Mag came back after sending Amy to school. He met Angus at the door, so he stopped and greeted him. "Angus, have you eaten your breakfast?" "Yes. I have eaten my breakfast at the relief station." Angus smiled and nodded. He looked at Mag expectantly and nervously at the same time. "Boss Mag Beck, he. Is there news about him?" "So, he is that old man? He's such a poor thing. He must have suffered a lot all these years as he searched for his child. He had walked all over the Roth Empire on his legs. Only a father's love could have kept him going. Damn those human traffickers. They should all be arrested and jailed in Bastille prison for the rest of their lives." The customers in the line were looking at Angus, who was talking to Mag with pity and indignation. A short distance away, Hadda, who was wearing the straw hat, stared at the rickety old man as his body trembled. Those lost memories flashed through his mind like fragments. He'd been a tall, well-built, and wealthy-looking middle-aged man. That image slowly merged with that rickety old man with white hair and dressed in tattered clothes a short distance away. "Father," a hoarse voice came out from Hadda's throat as the straw hat was blown away by a gust of wind and revealed his face. Angus's whole body shook. His eyes widened as he slowly turned away to look at the young man, who stood a short distance away, in a total shock. Mag, who was still thinking about how to console Angus, also looked over as he heard the sound. His eyes lit up as he saw that man who looked exactly like what the system had drawn. The mole near the left eyebrow was especially obvious. "It's that man in the picture. It's him. It's him. It has to be him. He's exactly identical. My heavens! Is this the reunion of the father and son?" A commotion broke out amongst the customers in the line as they watched this scene in disbelief. "My son!" Angus suddenly regained his wits and quickly strode toward Hadda shakily. Hadda also limped forward, and then he hugged Angus tightly. "My son! My son!" Angus hugged Hadda and repeated those two words again and again with tears. Hadda, too, was crying as he hugged Angus, who was already a head shorter than him. The tall and strong father in his memory had become so weak and small now. He didn't seem to have much flesh on his body. He felt like he was hugging a skeleton that could easily fall apart anytime. It made him feel sad and self-reproachful. He'd actually been searching for him all these years. He suffered as much as he had on the road for the past 25 years, and yet he had always blamed him. The customers quieted down gradually as they looked at Hadda's broken right leg and left hand with two missing fingers with pity. This issue seemed to have a happy ending, but the child that the human traffickers had kidnapped had to have endured unimaginable pain and suffering, and nobody knew how he had survived all these years. Even after finding his father, how was he going to face his future life with a physical handicap? Your hand. Your leg. Angus noticed Hadda's leg and hand rapidly. He touched the scars that were healed long ago, and said with self-reproach, "These are all my fault. It's my fault. If I had watched after you properly, you wouldn't have been kidnapped by them. Your hand and leg. It's my fault. My fault, no, father, this is not on you." Hadda grabbed Angus's hands as he attempted to slap himself. Shaking his head, he said, "It's on those human traffickers. They were the hateful ones. Furthermore, I can live normally now. You don't have to blame yourself." Angus looked at Hadda. Even though the padded jacket that he was wearing was well worn, it was very clean. Although his leg was crippled, he was still a strapping man. His arms were almost 2 times thicker than normal people's. It almost made people forget about his handicap. "Nice to meet you, I am one of Mamie Restaurant's customers. I feel very sorry for what happened to you guys. This is a small token, and I hope that you two can have a better life in the future." Constantine came up to the two of them from the line and gave them a check from Buffett Bank with both his hands. Hadda looked at Constantine with gratitude, but he shook his head, and said, "Thank you for your kind intentions, but I will take care and provide for my father myself. I have arms and legs, so I can work to provide for him." "You are welcome." Constantine rejoined the line and glanced toward the restaurant. He saw that beautiful figure behind the glass panes and smiled. "Miss Shirley must have noticed my generosity and kindness, right? This is quite a good start." Shirley looked at Constantine and pursed her lips with disdain as she said, "Oh my, he's showing off just because he's rich. He doesn't care if it is appropriate." "Yes." Anna, who was standing next to her, agreed wholeheartedly and nodded. Then, she looked at Angus and Hadda with a smile, and said, "However, the grandpa has managed to find his child." "That's fantastic." Yabimiya nodded with tears in her eyes, and said, "Yes. Boss is so kind-hearted and loving." She could empathize with Hadda's current feelings very strongly. But when would her father come and look for her? What did he look like? Could Boss draw a picture of my father too? Yabimiya looked at Mag, and a thought flashed through her mind and consumed her. She had always been waiting for her father to come and look for her. Why couldn't she go and look for him instead? 18 years had passed, was he searching for her too? "I will ask Boss once the service is over," Yabimiya thought. Mag watched the reunited father and son with a smile on his face. However, as he looked at Hadda's missing fingers and crooked right leg, he felt as if someone had stabbed him in the heart. Damn human traffickers! Angus and Hadda embraced each other for a while before Angus brought Hadda over to Mag and said with gratitude, "Thank you, Mr. Mag, thank you for reuniting my son and I." "Thank you." Hadda bowed deeply at Mag too. If Mag had not made this missing person notice, they wouldn't have seen each other in this vast world again. It was only when he met his father that he finally realized he had always wanted to see his family again, even after all these years. He had never expected to meet his father again in Chaos City, which was thousands of miles away from their home. "Don't mention it." Mag helped them up with a smile. "It was nothing difficult. I am also very happy that you two can see each other again." "Rachel." Hadda turned and waved to Rachel, who was standing at a side quietly. He shyly said to Angus, "It's Rachel who told me about the missing person notice. And it's her who brought me here. She is, the woman I like." Angus looked at Rachel, who was about 20 years old and looked fair, and smiled brightly. "How do you do, Uncle?" Rachel stepped forward. She was holding onto the edge of her shirt nervously with a blush on her face. "Good. Good." Angus nodded with satisfaction in his eyes. Mag got the buffet coupon from Yabimiya, who already prepared it in advance, and passed to Rachel with a smile. It is a good thing that the father can reunite with his son. This young lady had brought back to the restaurant, so this buffet coupon for two belongs to you. You can bring one person along with you to have a meal in Mamie restaurant during any of its opening hours. Wow! That is fantastic! Everyone was staring at the buffet coupon in Mag's hand with wide-open eyes. To the foodies, this was equivalent to an admission ticket to the heavens. Rachel looked at the coupon in Mag's hand and hesitated for a moment before accepting it. She said, "Can I regift this?" "Regift it?" Mag looked at Rachel with a perplexed expression. The customers were also staring at Rachel. Didn't this lady want to have a romantic dinner with this gentleman who had just found his father? Yes. I would like to give this buffet coupon to SAHDR and his father. They should be the ones to enjoy a great meal together. Rachel nodded and smiled at SAHDR with a loving look. This big sister has such a beautiful smile, Anna whispered. Everyone was beginning to look at Rachel with a gentle gaze too. A young lady like this was indeed very beautiful. She's really a good girl. Mag's eyes lit up too. He had such strong mental strength despite his physical disabilities, and even met such a good young lady. He didn't have to worry for him anymore. Rachel, SAHDR gazed at Rachel. He was deeply touched, but he didn't know what to say. Angus quickly waved his hands, and said, "No, no, no. How can you give this to me? Beck and I can eat anywhere. This is a place for you youngsters to come to eat." Then, he gave SAHDR a suggestive look. But, Rachel still tried to insist. SAHDR, who understood the look, scratched his head and grasped Rachel's hands. He shook his head, and said, "Let's come together again, Rachel." Rachel looked at the gentle SAHDR and the smiling Angus, and then looked at the buffet coupon in her hand. She hesitated for a moment before she agreed and kept the buffet coupon. Applause erupted at the entrance and the customers were all smiling. Although they all wanted to have that buffet coupon, that was the best outcome without a doubt. Angus said to Mag, "I'm very grateful for your help, Mr. Mag. You let me see Beck again. He says he wants to bring me home, so we shall take our leave first. Don't let us delay your opening hours anymore. We will come back to thank you properly later. Please don't mention it. If you require my help for anything, please feel free to look for me here at Mamie restaurant," Mag said smilingly. Mag only retrieved his gaze after the three of them disappeared from his view. He glanced at his watch and realized that it was already 10 minutes past the opening hour. He apologetically said to the customers, "Please pardon me for wasting 10 minutes of your time. The breakfast service will end 10 minutes later today. Welcome to Mamie restaurant, everyone. It's fine. For a matter like this, even another 10 minutes delay will be fine too," a customer answered, and the others all agreed. In the line, Gloria was watching the three of them walking away as she wondered, "Rachel? She seems to be an embroidery worker in blue suede. Furthermore, her skills are rather good too. However, Mr. Mag is so kind-hearted. He is such a learned and refined person." Gloria looked at Mag with sparkling eyes. After the breakfast service, Mag went to the City Lord's Castle and Catering Association personally to notify them that they had found the person. He expressed his gratitude as well. This was the first time that Mag had done something like this. There was indeed a special feeling after he found the man. On his way back to the restaurant, Mag saw a little beggar who was crawling along the sidewalk. He had 2 missing fingers and a broken leg. His bicycle slowed down gradually as Mag looked at the boy who was around 6, 7 years old. He looked so weak as if he had only a layer of skin left on him. He was only wearing a set of thin clothes in such cold weather. His pants were already torn due to the crawling and blood could be seen on his black knees. There were many battered marks on his face and arms. Pedestrians who walked by him would stare as they couldn't help themselves. Sometimes, someone would drop a few copper coins into his broken bowl, and the little boy would do a few kowtows and mumble a word of thanks. Mag felt his heart clench at that instant. It had been 25 years, and yet the same problem was still happening. Anger rushed up to Mag's brain instantaneously. But he didn't go forward. Instead, he just observed from the side. The number of copper coins in the little beggar's bowl began to increase, and soon it was almost half a bowl full. A bony man, who was squatting a short distance away, walked over. He glanced around before he bent over and poured all the copper coins from the bowl into his pocket. He even kicked the little beggar when he got up before he bent down again to say a few words to him. Then, he turned, looked at Mag viciously and strode toward him. He showed Mag a short dagger hidden underneath his clothes when he passed him by, and coldly said, "Scram! Keep your nose out of my business, or else I will slaughter you." "All right." Mag grabbed hold of his bicycle handles tightly before he slowly pushed his bicycle and walked away. That whole day, Mag rode his bicycle all over the entire Chaos City. His expression slowly changed from anger to calmness, and finally to indifference. The same problem was indeed still happening in Chaos City. It didn't change because of time, and even the method had remained the same. There were at least over 300 children who were maimed and forced to beg on the streets and lanes of Chaos City. There were 7 gangs who were controlling these children. Humans, demons, and orcs were all in cahoots. Underneath the surface of Chaos City's peace and equality hid darkness that shocked Mag. It was late at night. Amy was already asleep. Mag was writing 7 letters with his left hand in the study. He put the letters into the envelopes and then wrote on every one of them, "Urgent. Private and confidential, for the city lord's eyes only." The light in the study was extinguished. A shadow leaped down from the 2nd floor of the restaurant, and then disappeared into the darkness. "Cry. You can cry harder. I will kill you if you make one more sound." In the slums at the north of the city, in a courtyard surrounded by high walls, a drunk middle-aged man was holding a whip and lashing fiercely at the little beggar in front of him. That little beggar was only 7, 8 years old. His clothes were torn by the whip's lashes and revealed the wounds beneath them. His body was twisted in pain, but he covered his mouth tightly so he wouldn't cry out, because he knew if he cried out then, he would really die on that day. A few dozens of little beggars were huddled together in a corner in the courtyard, staring at the man holding the whip with fear. Everly was the scariest demon. A little beggar would die in his hands every few days. Nobody could escape from his clutches. Anyone who had tried to escape died. Even if they managed to escape, they would be recaptured and slowly tortured to death in front of everyone. If you even dare to keep 1 copper coin in the future, you are dead. Everly spat on the face of the little beggar before he pointed the whip at the other little beggars and smirked. "And you guys remember this? You all are the dogs I reared. The money that you got from begging all belongs to me. If you dare to keep any copper coins, I will kill you all." The little beggars all lowered their heads and averted their gazes from Everly. Everly was satisfied with their behavior. It made him feel like a king. Nobody had escaped from his clutches in the past 20-odd years. Oh, no. There was one, which was a humiliation to you. But, he was still young then. After that, no imps had ever escaped from his clutches again. Those who did were all dead. A bony man came in from the yard with a sinister smile, and said, "Boss, a new batch just arrived. There are 2 little girls, do you want to try first?" "Great. It has been some time before we had new stock. Let's go check them out. I'll give you one after I'm finished with them tonight." Everly's eyes lit up. He walked toward the door as he rubbed his hands. "Great." The bony man's eyes lit up, and he strode excitedly toward the door. Creak. The worn-out door opened in gradually from outside. "Didn't I ask you to wait outside?" the bony man shouted unhappily. A figure holding a sword walked in as he indifferently said, "They are still outside." "Who are you?" Everly and the bony man were shocked as they looked at the man in black who just came in. His face was covered by a piece of black cloth, and only his eyes were visible. Right behind him, a few figures were lying in a puddle of blood. They were the delivery guys. "Guys, come here. Someone's here looking for trouble," the bony guy shouted into the yard in panic. After a series of noises, figures carrying weapons rushed out and stood behind Everly. The arrival of his minions boosted Everly's confidence. He coldly said to the man in black at the door, "Although I don't know which gang you belong to, it doesn't matter. I'm not interested. What I am sure of is that you are dead meat." Mag looked at the child lying on the ground and those children huddling at a corner. He said in a chilling voice, "It's an unforgivable crime to abduct and mutilate children. I hereby sentence you to death. Acting as a hero? Smash him!" Everly swung his hand, snatched the saber from a minion at his side, and attacked Mag. Mag raised his hand and stabbed his sword into Everly's heart. There wasn't any hesitation. The sword already went through another man's throat as if he was just stomping on an insignificant ant. Like an agile snake, the sword slided across those people's throats and finally stopped in front of the throat of the bony man. "Don't kill me! Don't kill me!" The bony man had already broken down. 20 men were all killed in an instant, and even Everly, who was a third-tier knight, didn't survive more than a second. He collapsed in front of this man just like a helpless ant. "I simply like to stick my nose into others' business," Mag said calmly to the bony man. "You?" The bony man's eyes widened immediately as he thought of the man he met in the morning. The sharp long sword went into his throat and stopped the rest of his words. "Don't be afraid. Someone will come to rescue you," Mag said to those children who were screaming in a panic as he sheathed his long sword and disappeared into the dark night. Right here. Very soon, a series of footsteps could be heard from beyond the yard. Men who were wearing the uniforms from the city lord's castle and the Grey Temple rushed into the small courtyard. They were all shocked when they saw the terrified children who were huddling in a corner. "Those animals!" The official from the city lord's castle who was leading the team said with tears in his eyes, "Rescue the children. Report back to the city lord." The city lord's castle was brightly lit, and the staff were all walking around with serious expressions. "My lord, this is the 5th letter." An official strode into the meeting room and presented him a letter. The meeting room was full of people. They were officials from the city lord's castle and people from the Grey Temple. Their expressions were all serious and furious. Their gazes all landed onto that letter. In front of Michael, there were already 4 identical letters. Because of these 4 letters, they were all awakened from their slumber and rushed to the city lord's castle immediately. This was a rare 5th-tier incident. As Michael tore open the envelope of the 5th letter with a somber expression, a staff member rushed in, and announced, "My lord, the 4th team just reported that they have discovered 51 abducted children and 23 suspected human traffickers. The suspected human traffickers were all killed before the 4th team's arrival. The children found on the spot all had different degrees of mutilation, except those who were just sent to the lair. According to the children, it was a man in black who saved them. There is only one person. Another 50 children." The expressions of all the people in the meeting room had changed. They could barely control their anger. In less than an hour, the city lord's castle had received 4 letters. There were 4 addresses in the letters which all turned out to be lairs of the human traffickers when the city lord's castle personnel arrived. There were already over 100 children found. These human traffickers were so horrendous that it raised their hackles. They wanted to crush those human traffickers after they saw what they had done to the children. "Who is that man in black?" Everyone was curious about the man in black who triggered this incident. He was fully in charge of everything. Even the city lord's castle was just his sidekick. He was working alone, so how did he find out about those human traffickers' lairs hidden deep within the slums and dark alleys? And he always managed to kill all the human traffickers and leave the scene before the people from Grey Temple arrived. Michael took out the 5th letter with a somber expression. This letter, too, only had a phrase and a sentence, "Human traffickers' lair. Get the children out." Michael passed the letter to the chief secretary at his side, and said in a deep voice, "Order the 5th team to depart now." All the leaves of the City Lord's Castle and Grey Temple's personnel are cancelled. Inform all our medical personnel and magic casters who know healing magic to assemble at the City Lord's Castle and await orders. Bring all the children back and do our best to provide them with treatment. Yes. The chief secretary turned about and strode out quickly. As Michael looked at the officials present, he shook his head and said, "I am very disappointed. There are so many children who were mistreated so cruelly right under all your noses, and yet you people could manage to ignore them all these years? If there weren't all these letters which were delivered to the City Lord's Castle today, were you guys going to continue to pretend that you have already made Chaos City a stable and peaceful place?" All the officials lowered their gazes in a silence. A Grey Temple official stood up and said with shame, "My lord, this is the Grey Temple's dereliction of duty." "No. This is the dereliction of duty of both the City Lord's Castle and Grey Temple." Michael shook his head and smashed his fist onto the table. He somberly said, "Tonight, regardless of how many letters will be delivered to the City Lord's Castle, and how many children will be saved by the unnamed hero, I want you guys to do everything you can to eradicate every single human trafficker's lair in Chaos City. Rescue all the children, apprehend all the human traffickers. All the 10th tier magic casters are to coordinate and move out with us. This is the City Lord's order. Code name, Operation Daisy." Michael wrote 2 lines of words on a piece of paper. Then, he took out his City Lord's seal and placed his mark on it. "You shall inform Lord Roland that we need the Grey Temple to coordinate with the City Lord's Castle for this operation," Michael said to the Grey Temple official who had spoken up earlier. "Yes," that official answered, and strode toward the door. "I hope all of you can end this before the sun rises, otherwise the children who are left behind will be in grave danger." Michael passed the City Lord's order to the official who stood next to him. All the City Lord's Castle's officials and Grey Temple's officials stood up and walked out of the meeting room. "This is a battle. A battle to rescue the abducted children." The City Lord's chief secretary returned to the meeting room, and whispered next to Michael's ear, "My lord, these letters were delivered to the City Lord's Castle by pedestrians. They didn't know what was in the letter. There could still be pedestrians on their way to deliver more letters. If we could find these pedestrians who are on their way here, maybe we would know the man in black's next target." "Leave it." Michael waved his hand as he shook his head, and said, "All these are obviously part of his plans. Tonight, both the City Lord's Castle and Grey Temple would not have done better than him. Let him do whatever he intends to. What we have to do is to bring all the children back safely and heal them with all we can, and destroy all the human traffickers' syndicates that are not included in his plan." The chief secretary nodded with a thoughtful expression. Who are you?" A 7th tier demon grabbed the long sword that was stabbed into his chest as he kneeled in front of the man in black with unwillingness. "A father." Mag removed the long sword and sliced the 10 fingers off the demon's hand. "You are safe now," he gently said to the children in the black cages at the side. Footsteps could be heard from beyond the courtyard. Mag put away his sword. He leaped out of the courtyard and disappeared into the dark again. He hid on a dead tree a short distance away, and observed that small courtyard that was brightly lit up by torches. He could hear the shouts of the City Lord's Castles and Grey Temple's personnel. The children were freed from the metal cages before they were blindfolded and carried out of the courtyard. They were put in the horse-drawn carriages that were prepared in advance and drove toward the City Lord's Castle. 7 lairs, 150 human traffickers, 342 children. Even though we cannot eradicate them completely, from today onward, there shouldn't be any more organized human traffickers syndicates in Chaos City anymore. Mag threw the long sword he borrowed from the system aside casually. The system kept it away automatically. An intense feel of tiredness washed all over him. It was tiring enough if he had to hack through 150 blocks of wood, let alone killed 150 human traffickers. There were even 2 7th tier demons and 1 7th tier orc among them. "I hope Lord Michael won't disappoint me with his following actions. Mag glanced at that courtyard again before he leaped onto a roof at a side and moved toward Aiden Square. Mag avoided a few teams from the City Lord's Castle and Grey Temple on his way back. He was shocked to sense a few 10th-tier great magic casters' auras among them. At the same time, he felt gratified. Mag let the system keep and handle the black clothes when he got back to the restaurant. He took a shower carefully to wash away the bloody scent before he changed into his pajamas and lay on the bed. The gross feeling that arose from killing too many people made it hard for him to fall asleep. However, he didn't regret his actions at all. As a father, when he saw those children who were maimed, there was only one thought in his mind: human traffickers deserved to die. Mag sat up and looked at Amy, who was sound asleep on her bed. This little one was hugging Ugly Duckling with a smile on her face as if she was having a wonderful dream. Mag's heart calmed down gradually, and a smile appeared on his face. That night, many didn't sleep in Chaos City. The powerful magic casters were wandering around the slums and lanes at the north of the city. They were scanning the surroundings at the full expense of their spiritual powers. Many courtyards with high walls were barged into, and human traffickers who were deep in their slumber were taken away. The abducted children were brought to the City Lord's Castle. The City Lord's Castle was brightly lit through the entire night. The children's cries were pacified gradually. The healing magic casters had tears in their eyes, and some even ran out to brawl their eyes out before going back to continue healing the children. It was almost dawn when the tired-looking chief secretary came into the meeting room with a document folder. Facing Michael, who also didn't sleep the entire night, he said, "My lord, the cross-search was fully completed with the coordination of the Grey Temple and the City Lord's Castle. After deducting the 150 human traffickers who were killed by the man in black on the spot and the 342 children that he rescued, the following search resulted in apprehending 52 human traffickers and rescuing 61 abducted children. The children are all accepting healing right now. The healing magic casters have all done their very best to help their children regain their health, but there are still 120 children who will remain handicapped for the rest of their lives." Michael received the document and read through it carefully with a somber expression. He nodded. "The search will carry on in secret. Continue to monitor and investigate suspicious people and locations. Make sure we don't miss out on anything. Organize the children's information and release it to the public as soon as possible. Find their parents for them and send them back home. The City Lord's Castle will set up a special fund to raise those children nobody claims. They will be properly educated, and when they grow up, they will have the skills to make a living for themselves. At the same time, we have to improve the emergency response mechanism for missing children. Once we receive a case of missing children, the City Lord's Castle and Grey Temple must respond actively and plan necessary deployment to find the children as soon as possible. And arrange a meeting with Roland for me. With regard to human traffickers' penalties, I feel there is a need to introduce a law amendment in Chaos City. I need to discuss it with him." "Yes." The chief secretary jotted down everything rapidly in his personal notebook. He paused, and asked Michael, "A law amendment would require both the City Lord's Castle and Grey Temple to vote. May I ask how much you think the punishment should be increased? They don't even spare the innocent children." "Death penalty is the minimum," Michael said solemnly. "Yes." The chief secretary nodded. "Oh, yes. Didn't Boss Mag help an old man find his child who was kidnapped by human traffickers 25 years ago yesterday?" Michael said suddenly. "Yes. You had agreed to put up the missing person notice on the notice boards earlier. Mr. Mag had come to the City Lord's Castle again yesterday to notify us that the old man had already found his child. Therefore, we had removed the missing person notice and released a new notice." The chief secretary nodded. Michael nodded thoughtfully. "Add in Mamie Restaurant into my schedule. I am going to see Boss Mag." The citizens of Chaos City discovered in shock that all the little beggars, who were always begging on the streets, had disappeared in one night. This made those people who always gave to those children worried. They wondered if the poor children were frozen to death as the nights were starting to get colder. Mag went to the little bed with a smile, and gently said, "Little Amy, time to rise and shine. Wash and eat your breakfast, or else you will be late for class." Amy shook her head with her eyes closed, and said, Your little Amy is not awake. Then what shall I do? Your little Amy says you have to kiss and hug her. And raise her above your head before she will wake up," Amy said with a naughty smile. "All right then." Mag smiled helplessly as he bent over and kissed Amy lightly on her forehead. "Your little cutie is already online." Amy flicked open her eyes and stretched out her arms at Mag as she poutingly said, "I want you to hug and raise me above your head." "All right," Mag said indulgently with a smile. Then, he carried Amy up, raised her above his head, and gently lowered her down. He repeated the moves a few times. "I'm flying. I'm flying." Amy's crystal clear giggles filled the room. Meow Ugly Duckling, which was at the foot of the bed, was staring thoughtfully. It lay back on the ground, closed its eyes, and stretched out its two little paws. Mag only lowered Amy after she had enough fun. Then, he took out the clothes that she was supposed to wear today. Amy sat on the bed and trod on Ugly Duckling's belly gently as she said, "Don't play dead, Ugly Duckling, get up now." Meow, meow. Ugly Duckling twisted around with its eyes closed, seeking her favor. "Don't you know what you look like?" Amy retrieved her little foot. Ugly Duckling opened its eyes and gave Amy a gloomy glance before standing up and rubbing against Amy's leg with its head. Amy rubbed Ugly Duckling's head with her feet as she consoled, "It's fine. It's not your fault that you are ugly. This is your fate. It's cold today, so Amy's got to wear her padded jacket and bunny beanie." Mag brought a white down jacket and a little beanie over. After helping Amy change out of her pajamas, he wrapped her up with the down jacket and put on the beanie for her. The white bunny beanie had two cute droopy ears. The beanie could cover the ears nicely, and there were two white fur balls that fell to her hands level. Wearing it together with the white down jacket made her look like a little white rabbit, which was so adorable. Mag nodded with satisfaction as he felt that his dressing sense was getting back. Meow Ugly Duckling gazed at Amy in shock as it almost couldn't recognize her. "Father, how do I look?" Amy asked expectantly. Very adorable." Mag nodded. "Amy wants to have a look too." "Amy wants to have a look too." Amy said excitedly. "Then, Father will carry you." Mag carried Amy to the bathroom. "Wow! Little bunny is so cute." Amy looked at herself in the mirror with wide eyes. Then, she began to sing, "Little bunny, white and chubby, two pointed ears, little Amy, you can try to pull those two fur balls," Mag said smilingly as he suddenly remembered something. "This." Amy took one white fur ball and pulled. The left bunny ear stood up. "Wow!" Amy blinked and stared at the pointed ear in amazement. Then, she grabbed the other and pulled it. The other ear stood up too. Pull and release, and the bunny ears would rise and fall. Amy's eyes widened as she made all sorts of cute expressions. "It's so fun and cute. Father, I really like this little bunny," Amy said happily as she held Mag's face and gave him a kiss. "What a cute rabbit spirit, Miss Elizabeth, do you feel better?" Yabimiya asked gently when she walked into the room with a cup of water and saw Elizabeth standing by the bed, looking down. "I'm fine now." Elizabeth turned back and nodded slightly when she saw Yabimiya. She received the cup of water from Yabimiya naturally, and took a couple of sips before putting it on the window ledge. "That's great." Yabimiya smiled. However, she wore a worried face quickly. She hesitated for a while before asking, "Then, are you going to leave?" Elizabeth replied with a slight nod. Her gaze was fixed outside the window. The overly comfortable days spent here had almost caused her to forget the oath that she swore back then. One day, she would return to Frost Dragon Island and defeat all the frost dragons there to keep that position for her father. Therefore, she had to leave. Of course, most importantly, it was because she was worried that Fox might find his way here. But you've been severely injured twice in a row. Where do you intend to go this time? Yabimia's face was full of worries. I'm not sure yet, Elizabeth replied calmly. There was a lost look in her eyes. That's right, where to go? Yabimia watched Elizabeth. She hesitated for a long while, and finally gathered the courage to say, if you haven't decided, continue staying here. Chaos City is a very safe place. If you don't mind, I can recommend you to Boss Mag so that you can also become an employee in Mamie Restaurant. That way, you won't be bored. Become an employee. Elizabeth frowned. If you're unwilling, it's all right. I'm just worried that you would be bored staying in the room. Yabimia quickly waved her hands and wanted to hit her mouth. How could such a dignified giant dragon like Miss Elizabeth work as a service staff member like her? Elizabeth looked at Yabimia silently for a while before saying, let me consider it for a while. Yabimia, who was already prepared to hear Elizabeth dismiss that idea, was stunned. Her eyes gleamed with surprise, and she quickly nodded her head. Then I'll ask boss in the morning. Elizabeth replied, picked up the cup of water, and took another sip as she looked out of the window. She, too, did not know why she would give such a reply. That was totally not like her, and was not according to her previous plan. Then I'll get to work. I'll bring you some delicious breakfast later. Before Elizabeth could regret her decision, Yabimia walked out the door happily. Be a service staff member in Chaos City? No, I can't fall by the wayside, but, why do I feel like I don't want to reject her? Elizabeth stood by the window and looked at the cup of water in her hand, baffled. Little rabbit, let's go down. Mag was full of smiles as he carried Amy downstairs. The little fellow would always lift one's mood up. Wow, Amy's little rabbit hat is so cute. Anna, who was already in the restaurant, said as she saw Amy come down. Little Amy is so cute. Ferris was also blown away. There was a moment she felt that she had seen her princess. She could not help but think of Princess Irina when she saw her demeanor and expression. Yabimia and the rest also crowded around and praised Amy's outfit today. There were some of them who could not resist the urge to reach out and pinch Amy's rabbit ears. When she heard everyone's praises, Amy's little face was filled with joy. She reached her hand out to grab 2 furry balls with a smile, and said, I can even show you a very impressive magic trick. Magic! Anna rushed up to the front and watched Amy curiously. Everyone also looked at Amy curiously, wondering what the little fellow would conjure up. Watch carefully. Amy nodded. She stretched out her index finger on the hand holding the furry balls, pointed to her left rabbit ear, and said, left ear. The floppy left rabbit ear suddenly straightened. Right ear. The right ear also straightened. Left. Right. Left. Together, as Amy chanted, one of the rabbit ears would straighten, and then the other one, and coupled with Amy's quirky expressions, her audience burst out into laughter. They were all melted by Amy's cute performance. Wow, how impressive, how cute! Anna clapped her little hands and looked enviously at Amy's little rabbit hat. It looks like little Anna likes this little rabbit hat very much too, Shirley thought as she looked at Anna. Let's have breakfast first. Mag brought everyone's breakfast out from the kitchen. After this period of time, everyone was very familiar with Mag's eating habits. After breakfast, Mag put on his gloves and pushed his bicycle out to send Amy to school. The moment Amy stepped out of the door wearing the little rabbit hat, the customers' eyes lit up. For the regular customers of Mamie Restaurant, there were 2 reasons for coming to Mamie Restaurant: firstly, the delicious food, and secondly, the adorable little boss. There were certain things that people would find lovely just by watching. The little boss obviously belonged to that kind. Little boss, the little rabbit you're wearing today is very cute," Harrison said with a grin. "Uncle Grey Fatty, your little tummy today." Amy took a look at Harrison's large tummy and shrugged apologetically. "I'm sorry, I really can't bring myself to praise it." Harrison, although he was very angry, why was he unable to blow his top? The customers all laughed. One of their joys came from hearing the little boss diss the customers. "Uncle Three Hair, keep working hard and you can become Uncle Two Hair," Amy said seriously as she climbed onto the bicycle and broke out in a smile at a balding uncle. She even made her two rabbit ears straighten a few times in encouragement. That uncle twirled the 3 strands of hair left on his head silently, trying to make that oasis in the desert look denser. Mag laughed as he shook his head and reminded Amy to hold on tight. He stepped lightly on the pedal and rode off. "Wow! What a cute rabbit spirit!" "That's not a rabbit spirit, it's obviously the recently super popular little hero." "Amy! It's the same hat, but why does it look so good on her?" As Amy entered the school, she attracted the gazes of many students because of her hat. Mag used his stern gaze to frighten the few children who looked like they obviously had romantic thoughts. Although they were just 7 to 8-year-olds, he still had to strangle all of it in the cradle. On the way back, Mag observed carefully and saw no more signs of any of those little beggars. Meanwhile, there was an obvious increase in the people from Grey Temple and the City Lord's castle patrolling around. This was undeniably a good thing. When it came to kidnapping, the most Mag could do was to scare the kidnappers off, and he still had to depend on the City Lord to solve the root of the problem. In his last letter for City Lord Michael, Mag raised some of his opinions, and if the City Lord could consider some of his suggestions, the kidnapping cases in Chaos City would be curbed to a very large extent. The busy operating hours had ended, and the people in Mamie Restaurant could finally get some rest. Mag was removing his apron while walking out of the kitchen when Yabimiya came over and hesitated for a while before saying, "Boss Mag, I have something to talk to you about." "Oh, right, Mia, the chicken soup and fried rice are already packed in the thermal boxes. You can just take it. Is the injured lady feeling better?" Mag said with a gentle smile as he turned around after hanging his apron at the side. "Mm. Her injuries are getting better. She is fine now." Mia nodded. She hesitated for a while before continuing, "There's something else I want to ask you. Does the restaurant still need more service staff?" Mamie Restaurant looked at Mia with surprise. An idea flashed past his mind, but he quickly dismissed it. Nodding, he said, "Yeah, there are more and more customers in the restaurant now. We are indeed a little short-handed. If there were more employees as good as you, it would naturally do us good." Yabimiya's eyes lit up, and she said a little nervously, "Then can I recommend someone? She's better than me at everything, and is even better looking than me." "Recommend someone?" Mag's expression suddenly changed. "No way, does it work this way?" When he recalled that lady who fought to the very last moment at the Frost battlefield, Mag did not think that she would look like a giant dragon who would be a service staff member at Mamie Restaurant. "Yes." Mia nodded profusely and looked at Mag with anticipation. Mag thought for a while and nodded, saying, "Since you recommended that person, you can let her have a go at the restaurant first. If she passes the interview, she is very welcome to join Mamie Restaurant." Mag had already thought things through. Since the people in Mamie Restaurant are from all over the place, there's a drag queen, a princess from the Moon Nation, a traitor of the Elves, and the #1 knight in Norland Continent. This can be omitted, having the daughter of the chief of the Frost Dragon tribe as well would not hurt. After all, she's an 8th-tier powerhouse. "Thank you." Yabimiya smiled in surprise. "I should be the one thanking you if you can find me a suitable employee," Mag said with a smile. Yabimiya looked at Mag and hesitated for a while before she resolutely said, "I still have to trouble you with something." "Hey! I saw the portrait you drew for Uncle Angus. It looked exactly like his child. I have never seen my father ever since I was young. I only know what he looks like based on what my mother said. Can you help me draw a portrait of my father? I want to look for him once I've saved enough money. That was my mother's dying wish. Yabimiya looked nervous and expectant. Mag's heart went out for Mia. He smiled and nodded as he gently said, "Of course, although I might not be able to draw out what he looks like exactly, I will try my best." Thank you, thank you." Yabimiya's eyes reddened instantly, and she bowed deeply towards Mag. "You're welcome." Mia helped Yabimiya up as he thought, "System, draw me another portrait. 1,000 copper coins, deal?" Host. The system's previous work was worth 10,000 copper coins. Isn't it a little too much to just cut the price by 10 folds? The system was a little dissatisfied. That's because I gave you an extra red packet of 9,000 copper coins to congratulate you on your opening. Now it's back to the market rate, 1,000 copper coins. If I don't buy it from you, wouldn't you be wasting this function of yours? Think about it, would you be able to earn 1,000 copper coins just by working hard to harvest vegetables for a year? Now all you have to do is simply activate your photocopier and you get 1,000 copper coins. Can't you even do such simple math? Mag said inside with a grin. That seems to be the case, the system was wavering. Start listing out your questions. What information do you need? I'll ask. Mag continued the conversation very naturally. I need distinctive physical features. Mag quickly asked Mia the questions based on the system's request, and obtained all the necessary information. Wait here for a while. I'll go upstairs to draw it out for you. Mag stood up and went upstairs. He went to the study to read for a while. Around 10 minutes later, he walked back down with the portrait that the system had already delivered. This is the portrait that I've done to the best of my ability. I cannot guarantee if it's accurate. Mag rolled the portrait up and passed it to Mia. When Mia received the portrait, her hands were obviously shaking, and her breathing also became faster. In her world, the only things about her father were the ones that her mother often repeated to her before she went to bed. Although she had always tried very hard to construct a complete image in her mind, she was still unsure what her father should look like up until now. She unrolled the portrait slowly. A man dressed in gold and silver armor, with 1 gold and 1 silver dragon horn on his head, appeared before her eyes. Even though it was just a portrait, those eyebrows as sharp as a sword, the gaze as cold as the edge of a knife, and that long scar above the left eyebrow exuded an aura of contempt that made one want to bow down in submission. "Father," Yabimiya's eyes were already red. When she saw the man in the portrait, bits and pieces of imagination in her mind finally pieced together. So this was her father, the man her mother had waited for more than a decade to come back but never got to see again. "You will find him," Mag said gently as he put his hand lightly on Yabimiya's head. Mia calmed down when she felt the warmth from the top of her head. She looked at Mag and agitatedly said, "Thank you, boss." After keeping the portrait, Yabimiya carried the thermal box and walked quickly towards the dormitory. Her footsteps were so light it seemed as though she was about to fly. When she opened the dormitory door, Mia put the thermal box on the dining table and opened the door to her room. Facing Elizabeth, who was standing by the window, she happily said, "Miss Elizabeth, boss agreed to let you go for the interview. Also, he drew me a portrait of my father. I finally know what my father looks like." "A portrait of your father?" Elizabeth turned around in an instant. She looked at the rolled-up paper in Mia's hand doubtfully. Didn't I tell you last night that our boss drew a portrait for an old grandpa of his missing son, and it was used for the missing person notice? This morning, the child who was lost for 25 years came to Mamie restaurant and reunited with his father. My gosh, he really looked exactly like what boss drew." Yabimiya nodded. She waved the portrait in her hand excitedly, and continued, "Then I asked boss to help me draw a portrait of my father. Although I've never met him, and only know what he looked like based on my mother's descriptions, I feel that what boss drew is my father. Elizabeth looked at an excited Yabimiya with some mixed emotions, and said, "Do you really want to know what he looks like so badly?" "Of course. I really want to know what he looks like. I even often dream of him, but every time I wake up, I forget what he looks like." Yabimiya nodded and was a little dejected, but she became happy again very quickly, and said, "But now I know. He definitely looks like this. Let me show you." As she said that, Yabimiya untied a thin string on the portrait and unrolled it slowly. An awe-inspiring man in a gold and silver armor, with one silver and one gold dragon horn on his head appeared in the portrait. "Father," when she saw the person in the portrait, Elizabeth blanked out for a moment. After not seeing him for 3 years, the image of him in her memory was already beginning to get blurry. After she saw the portrait, it became clear instantly. However, she was quickly doubtful. Even she was unable to draw her father's portrait so vividly, but Mia was actually able to get such a portrait from Mag. Could he really have drawn this portrait based on what Mia had told him? Of course, what made her more unsettled was that from this moment on, it would mean that Mia knew what her father looked like. That pair of gold and silver horns was rather well known in the Norland continent. "Miss Elizabeth, isn't my father very handsome? I intend to look for him the moment I've saved up enough money. Or, I could take this portrait and ask any giant dragon customers if they know my father in the future. I believe I would be able to find him one day." Yabimiya smiled hopefully. "You want to look for him?" Elizabeth felt strange seeing her smile. If Mia really did that, her identity would be exposed. Their father had way more enemies than friends. Mia could also feel the change in Elizabeth's mood. She curiously asked, "Miss Elizabeth, do you know my father?" Elizabeth looked at Yabimiya silently for a long while before nodding. "I do." "Really?" Yabimiya's eyes lit up. Her voice trembled a little as she gripped Elizabeth's hand, and she said in surprise, You really know my father? Do you know who he is? And where he is now?" It had been more than 10 years. It was the first time she knew what her father looked like, but she did not expect to be able to get news of him so quickly. It even felt surreal. "Because he is also my father." Elizabeth tried to control herself, but there was still a slight tremble in her voice. "You?" Yabimiya was stunned. She blinked as she watched Elizabeth and still felt as though she had heard her wrongly. She asked, "Miss Elizabeth, what did you just say?" "He is your father, and also my father," Elizabeth answered. "How? How can this be possible?" Yabimiya was finally certain that she did not hear wrongly. She took 2 steps back and looked at Elizabeth with increasing disbelief. How could her father be Miss Elizabeth's father? "His name is Rankster. He is the chief of the Frost Dragon tribe and a very powerful giant dragon. I am Elizabeth, Rankster's daughter, and also a Frost Dragon." Elizabeth tried to speak calmly as she looked at Yabimiya. Yabimiya opened her mouth, but did not say anything as she looked at Elizabeth for a very long time. Her mind was in a mess, and Elizabeth's words kept echoing inside. "Did you already know?" Yabimiya asked as she looked straight at Elizabeth after a while. "I'm sorry, I had to keep this from you because of various reasons." Elizabeth nodded. She was very apologetic. However, she quickly put on a serious expression, and said, "But I have to tell you that father has a lot of enemies. If others find out about your identity, you will be in great danger." Yabimiya's eyes reddened. As she got choked up with emotions, she said, "Where is he? Why hasn't he come even once after so many years? He promised my mother that he would come, but did not even come to see her for the last time. I don't know. They said that he is already dead." Elizabeth shook her head. She did not tell her that he was not there when her mother passed away as well. "Dead?" Yabimiya was shocked. Her eyes lost color and her body shook as though she was almost unable to stay upright. Elizabeth held Yabimia's shoulder, and gently said, "That's just what they said. No one has seen his corpse. I feel that he's just trapped in some place." Yabimia looked at Elizabeth when she felt the warmth on her shoulders. She pounced right into her embrace and started crying in an instant. Elizabeth stiffened slightly. Her heart softened immediately when she saw Mia, who was shaking and crying in her embrace. She lifted her hand and placed it gently on her back, comforting her. She did not know how she should comfort Mia, because she had never been comforted before. However, she wanted to bring some warmth to Mia to let her know that at least she was there. "Then, can I call you big sister?" Mia asked softly after crying in Elizabeth's embrace for a long time and soaking her shirt. The term big sister caught Elizabeth a little off guard. However, when she saw how pitiful Yabimia looked, she could not bring herself to reject her. She thought for a while and nodded, but quickly added, "You can only do so when there's no one else around." Mm. Yabimia nodded her head hard and smiled. Ever since her mother had passed away, she had never felt an embrace as warm and dependable. It was the first time that she found out that other than her father, she still had a sister in this world. "How can you bargain like that?" After she calmed down, Yabimia curiously asked Elizabeth, "Big sister, how did you find me?" "I got the ring that father left behind. He told me about you, so I found you based on the information he left behind." Elizabeth opened her hand, and in her palm was the ring that she had told Mia to take care of. "Although father did not look for you, he still felt guilty towards you. In this ring, there is a present for you. It's a golden dragon source. Once you absorb the dragon source, you will be able to get rid of your identity as a half-dragon and become a real giant dragon." Elizabeth put the ring in Mia's hand. "Become a real giant dragon?" Yabimia looked at the ring in her hand with hesitation. Elizabeth said, "Giant dragons fly in the sky and exist in the highest level of the Norland continent. After you become a giant dragon, you will be able to have strong powers. That way, you will be able to protect yourself and the things you want to protect." "Protect the people I want to protect?" Yabimia looked up at Elizabeth. Her gaze slowly became resolute. She nodded her head hard, and said, "I want to become a real giant dragon. I want to protect you and not let anyone harm you again." Elizabeth looked at Mia. It was ridiculous for a half-dragon with only brute strength to say that she wanted to protect an 8th-tier dragon like her, but when she heard it, she felt warmth in her heart. Even her parents would only keep telling her, "You need to become strong so that you can protect yourself." They never told her that they would protect her. "In another 10 days, you can consume this golden dragon source. When you become a real giant dragon, I will teach you how to train and fight. What about you? Will you stay? Boss already agreed to let you go for an interview. If you're willing, you can go to the restaurant for an interview with me today." Yabimia looked at her expectantly. Elizabeth hesitated for a while. When she saw Yabimia's expectant gaze, she nodded. "All right. That's great," Yabimia said with joy. She wiped the tears off her face and pulled Elizabeth to the window to take a seat. "I have so much to ask you. Say, where did you go last night? And where were you this morning?" In a stone hut, Benjamin looked at Rachel solemnly. His voice was stern. Rachel hung her head low, afraid to look at Benjamin as she softly replied, I was feeling a little unwell yesterday, so I went home early. This morning, Rachel went to visit my father with me." Just then, a voice came from the door. Hadda walked in and glanced at Rachel, and then suddenly dropped to his knees in front of Benjamin as he sincerely said to him, "Uncle, please give me Rachel's hand in marriage. I will treat her well and won't let her suffer a single bit." When she heard Hadda's voice, Rachel was surprised, but when she saw Hadda kneeling in front of her father, the nervousness on her face quickly became joy. What are you doing? Get up! Benjamin looked a little unhappily at Hadda kneeling in front of him, and said, "You can't even take care of yourself, what right do you have to say that you can take good care of my Rachel and not let her suffer? If Rachel married you, she would still have to support you and the old blacksmith. I will never agree to this." Hadda's gaze became dim. He looked at his two missing fingers, and did not know what to do all of a sudden. Rachel dropped to her knees as well in front of Benjamin and looked at him as she resolutely said, "Father, I am willing to marry Hadda. I am willing to live with him, whether in wealth or in poverty, I am willing to face everything with him." Hadda's eyes lit up. He looked at Rachel and Rachel looked back at him. The gazes were filled with love when they met each other. "You! Get up!" Benjamin looked at Rachel and was so angry that even his mustache was shaking. "I won't get up if you don't agree to it." Rachel shook her head. "I will never agree to it, not even if I die." Benjamin stood up in a huff and stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind him. The two knelt in silence for a while. Hadda stood up with the help of the wall, and then reached out to help Rachel up. He apologetically said, "I'm sorry, it's me, you're great. It's just that my father is too stubborn." Rachel reached out and gently covered Hadda's mouth. She shook her head as tears glimmered in her eyes. Hadda's gaze became resolute. He held Rachel's hands and gently said, "I will think of a way. Don't be too upset, and don't upset Uncle, either. He isn't young anymore. It will be bad if he falls ill because of that." Rachel nodded. She smiled. No matter what others might think, this man could always make her feel at ease. "Silly girl, how much suffering in this world have you experienced? If you marry that silly boy, Hadda, God knows how much more you're going to suffer. How am I supposed to face your deceased mother?" Benjamin leaned against the door and sighed deeply. "It's all my fault. Useless old man. I can't even help Beck marry the lady he likes." At the corner of the wall outside, Angus sighed in self-reproach, his eyes filled with worry. A black horse-drawn carriage pulled over in front of Mamie Restaurant. Michael got off from the horse-drawn carriage and looked at Mag, who was lying leisurely on a lounge chair at the door, and said, "Boss Mag, I hope I didn't disturb you by turning up without an invitation." There was a small coffee table beside the lounge chair, and on it was a little furnace that was boiling some tea. The water had already come to a boil, and the fragrance of tea wafted out. Mag opened his eyes when he heard the voice. He quickly stood up with a smile when he saw Michael walking over, and said, "It's my fault for not welcoming the city lord properly when you graced us with your presence. I wonder what brings you here. I have something to trouble you with." Michael went straight to the chair at the side and turned it to sit by the coffee table. He smilingly said, "Boss Mag, are you not inviting me to have some tea? This scent is much more enticing than the tea leaves I have. I've overlooked it." Mag sat down with a smile, poured a cup of red tea in a purple sand cup, and placed it in front of Michael. Michael picked the teacup up and took a sip. His eyes lit up, and he nodded with a smile as he said, "Wonderful tea." Michael placed the teacup down and looked at Mag as he said, "Boss Mag, I am here because of that missing person notice you put up yesterday. I heard that the old uncle found his son thanks to the portrait that you drew. Last night, Operation Daisy was held in the City Lord's Castle and the Grey Temple. With the help of a mysterious hero, we saved 403 children. Some of these children had been kidnapped for years, so they look very different from what they used to. I would like you to draw a portrait of their parents for these children. Is that possible?" 500 copper coins for a portrait, Michael said as he looked at Michael with clear eyes. "Host! How can you bargain like that?" The angry voice of the system sounded. Michael looked at Mag's clear gaze and fell silent for a while before saying, "The City Lord's castle's finances are a little tight recently. We can only afford 250 copper coins for a portrait at the most. Boss Mag, do you think you can make do with it?" "That's settled." Mag nodded. Hey! Host, I haven't agreed to it. 250 copper coins? Wasn't it supposed to be 500 copper coins? Why is it cut by half? It's not your money, so your heart doesn't ache at all, the system howled in Mag's mind. System, I am getting you a part-time job here. Have you seen anyone's boss so generous to find his employee a part-time job without asking for a single cent? Besides, this amount of money comes in a bulk. All you need to do is switch your photocopier on and print these pictures out, then all the money will end up in your pocket. It's much less troublesome than having to farm, Mag said calmly. Now that you put it that way, it does seem to make sense, hey, the system mumbled. You don't have to be too touched. I will still introduce you to any other good stuff like this, Mag said with a smile. Boss Mag, you have contributed greatly to Chaos City. I have no idea how I should thank you. Michael looked at Mag gratefully. For a top chef like Mag, a simple plate of Yangzhou fried rice would fetch him a sum way higher than a portrait. Besides, it was apparent that it would cost him less time too. Then why don't you get a membership card with me, City Lord? Mag pulled out a notebook and a gold card with a grin. After successfully promoting a membership card and obtaining a 10th tier knight as a member, Mag sent Michael off with a grin. He lay back down on his lounge chair and enjoyed the sun. Michael's original intention was to send the children to Mamie restaurant one by one so that Mag could ask them questions for the information he needed for the portrait, but this suggestion was turned down by Mag. Mag got the system to print out a stack of questionnaires and listed all the questions he needed to ask on it. The staff in the City Lord's castle would do the asking, and also take a strand of hair from the interviewees before sending all of them to Mamie restaurant. That way, the system would be able to come up with the portraits at its pace, and it would also save him a lot of trouble. Of course, there was another reason why Mag was unwilling to face those children. He was already unable to do anything more for them, but if he saw them, he would definitely want to think of something to do for them. It had been several days since the VIP membership had been launched, and Mag already had 6 10th tier members, 24 9th tier members, 62 8th tier members, and 127th tier members in his notebook. Although it was an almost non-restrictive promise, this large number of powerful members was enough to allow Mamie Restaurant to have a strong foothold in Norland continent. Ding! The host's expenditure has reached 336,520,000 points. The host can upgrade the restaurant from level 4 to level 7. After this upgrade, the restaurant's defense level will reach level 7, and you can receive an additional S-grade air defense missile that will be able to hit level 7 aerial targets. In addition, the host will also receive a chance for a free restaurant makeover, which includes opening up the space on the second floor, setting up private rooms, and more. The system's voice suddenly rang. Wow! Mag was slightly stunned. The sudden benefits that the system gave caught him by surprise. The restaurant's upgrade had almost nothing to do with his abilities. The strength that he spent 300 million on successfully added on to the expenditure, and was enough to level up the restaurant's defense to level 7, so it could be considered well spent. System, where did you copy that S-grade air defense missile from? The Patriots or the Red Flag? Mag asked curiously. Nonsense! How can you talk about copying when it comes to weapon making? I got the idea from the strengths of others and invented the world's strongest air defense missiles that can explode with horrifying power in a very small space, therefore killing all enemies, the system said solemnly. If an S-grade can kill a 7th tier target, what about an SS grade and SSS grade? Have you made them? Mag continued asking with interest. God said it's not to be disclosed, the system replied calmly, and did not speak further. Mag raised his eyebrow and did not continue asking. As for that makeover chance, after thinking for a while, Mag decided that he would not use it for the time being. The restaurant just had a makeover recently, and it would seem very pretentious to keep doing it. Besides, if he were to increase the number of private rooms, he would need even more service staff, and would even have to redo some of the service flow patterns, which was not what he wanted. "Boss, I've brought Miss Elizabeth over. She wants to become our restaurant's staff member." Mag was falling asleep with his eyes closed when he suddenly heard Yabimiya's voice by his ear. Mia opened his eyes and reached out to block the sunlight to see Elizabeth, who was standing beside Yabimiya. She had already regained the color on her face, but her breathing was still a little unstable. It was obvious that it would still take some more time for her to recover fully. When he recalled the day he cut her dress up, guilt flashed past Mag's eyes. Although the intention was indeed pure, he could not help but feel a little weird seeing Elizabeth again. He felt as though he had done something shameful. Could it be because I've been too pure recently? Mag raised his brow. It was not like he was some pure little puppy that would actually feel uneasy because he cut up a dress. Back in the days, he had done things even more pure. Of course, what shocked him more was that Elizabeth, a proud 8th-tier giant dragon, was actually willing to work in Mamie restaurant. That was indeed beyond his expectations. At the same time, he was impressed with Yabimiya's ability to trick people. Elizabeth looked at Mag calmly. That pair of eyes felt inexplicably familiar. The first time she saw him was at the city gate of Chaos City. It was Amy that made her take notice of this mere human. To think he could actually make such delicious food. However, looking at him right now made her feel a little different. Although he was still a normal human, he gave off the aura of someone who could not be overlooked. Besides, she kept having the feeling that she had seen that gaze somewhere before, not at the restaurant. "Hello, Miss Elizabeth." Mag stood up and reached his right hand out towards Elizabeth with a smile. Elizabeth looked at Mag's hand and hesitated for a while before reaching out a finger to touch him lightly and quickly retracting it. She nodded slightly, and said, "Hello." Mag glanced at his hand. This was the first time he experienced such a handshake. However, he did not dwell much on it. He retracted his hand with a smile, and said, "I'm very happy that you are willing to work at Mamie restaurant. However, before that, I need you to go through some simple tests." Although Elizabeth was very indifferent during the entire test, she was very cooperative. She completed Mag's test outstandingly and maintained her 8th-tier giant dragon's dignity. Her outstanding speed and judgment made her more than capable to take up the important task of serving. Therefore, Mag decided to employ her. "Congratulations, Miss Elizabeth. You're hired," Mag said to Elizabeth smilingly. Then, he congratulated himself in his heart for employing another super-skilled but low-paid super employee. Being an unscrupulous businessman really felt so good. Elizabeth only nodded slightly. She didn't look very happy. "Great." Yabimiya jumped up ecstatically. She seemed much happier than Elizabeth. "If you don't have any other arrangements for today, you can have your lunch at the restaurant and get to know the others. You could also familiarize yourself with the work content and process during the lunch service first. I believe Mia will guide you properly," Mag said to Elizabeth. "All right." Elizabeth nodded. "Don't worry, boss. I got it," Yabimiya said confidently. During their lunch, Mag announced to everyone that Elizabeth would be joining the restaurant. She was warmly received. Amy wondered as she gazed at Elizabeth, and mumbled, "Father shredded big sister Elizabeth's dress and then let her join the restaurant. I think things are not as simple as they look. Should I report to big sister Irina?" Mag, who was using his chopsticks to pick up the food for Amy, dropped a piece of fish onto the table. "Was it that scary? The fish can't be eaten, since it has fallen on the table. What a waste." Amy looked at that piece of fish with a tinge of regret. After pondering for a while, she reached out to pick up that piece of fish and placed it in front of Ugly Duckling. She smilingly said, "Come, Ugly Duckling. I am giving you a piece of fish." Ugly Duckling looked at Amy reproachingly. "Didn't she say it couldn't be eaten?" but it opened its mouth uncontrollably and swallowed it after it smelled the irresistible aroma. It smelled so good. Frost Dragon Island. In the biggest hall, a robust old man wearing a golden armor was shouting at Douglas, "Douglas, you old fool! Why did you let Fox have a duel with her? Were you trying to kill her on purpose?" Although Elizabeth is a descendant of the Frost Dragon tribe, she also came from the blood of the Golden Dragon tribe. If you Frost Dragons tried to kill her because you don't want her as your leader, we, the Golden Dragons, would definitely not stand by and watch you do it. The several Frost Dragon elders present looked furious, but the other party was one of the top 5 powerhouses in the Dragon Islands, and thus none of them dared to interrupt him. "Cecil, you old foggy! This is Frost Dragon Island, and not your Golden Dragon Island. It's not up to you to give orders here." Douglas also shouted coldly. Elizabeth was the one who suggested the duel. "As the Great Elder, I would never break the rules set by our ancestors. This is a Frost Dragon tribe's matter and none of your business. I will make things clear today. If anyone dares to touch Elizabeth, then they will be the enemies of the Golden Dragon tribe. The Golden Dragon tribe will hold its duels to select our tribe leader in a year's time. Any young giant dragons with Golden Dragon's blood will be eligible to take part. Elizabeth is eligible too. What shall we do now, Great Elder? If Elizabeth really becomes the tribe leader of the Golden Dragon tribe, then the power of the Golden Dragon tribe will increase, while ours will be weakened. Then, our situation will become worse than it is now," the 7th elder said worriedly. "Ah! I think Elizabeth is already in cahoots with the Golden Dragon tribe. She was even friendly with Alex. Such a rebellious character is exactly reminiscent of Rankster in the past. I think we should send someone to kill her to set an example," the 2nd elder said coldly. Douglas glanced at the 2nd elder, and calmly asked, "After killing Elizabeth, will you be able to prop up the future of the Frost Dragon tribe for the next 1,000 years? The 2nd elder moved his lips, but he couldn't voice out a word. He was almost reaching the end of his life. Don't even say it's for 1,000 years, he might not even make it to the next 200 years mark. Pass down this order. Forbid anyone from hurting Elizabeth. Cancel all the tracking," Douglas said. He continued on to the 2nd elder, "Furthermore, tell Fox that he still has another chance a year later. However, if he even touches a single scale on Elizabeth, he can forget about becoming the leader of the Frost Dragon tribe ever again. Have you heard about it? The person that everyone in the city was looking for was found." "Really? Whose luck is so good?" "I don't know. I heard it was a young lady." In the Blue Suede's factory, the female workers were chatting as they were getting ready for their shift that night. Cynthia looked at Rachel, who was sitting in a corner looking out of sorts, and curiously asked, "Rachel, was it you who found that person after you ran out in a hurry yesterday?" All the female workers looked at Rachel curiously after they heard that. She knew the rules of the factory very well, and was never late or left early. However, she ran out without applying for leave yesterday, which made the supervisor rather displeased. The factory most probably would deduct her pay. Everyone was curious where she went yesterday. "Yes, it's me." Rachel noticed everyone's gazes and nodded. She didn't like to lie. "Wow! It's really you." A commotion erupted in the workshop. All the female workers looked at Rachel with amazement and envy. That was a buffet coupon that was worth over 10,000. She would be able to enjoy the same delicacies that Miss Gloria enjoyed. That little pay deduction was nothing when compared to that. Cynthia rolled her eyes about and then went to Rachel full of smiles. She took her hand, and said, "Rachel, when do you intend to go and use the coupon? Anyway, you don't have anyone to bring along with you, so why don't you bring me along? We are such good friends. You won't say no to me, right?" Rachel shook her head apologetically. "I'm sorry, Cynthia. I already promised someone else." "All right. Cynthia released Rachel's hand disappointedly before going back to her seat and sulked. "Excuse me. May I ask, is Master Benjamin working here?" Angus asked the guard respectfully at the factory's entrance. "Yes, he does. Why are you looking for him?" The guard nodded and then sized up Angus. He wondered why this vagrant-like old man was looking for Master Benjamin. Angus pleaded, "I have something important to speak to him about. Can you bring me to him, please? I won't take up too much of your time." The guard seemed to be put in a predicament. The old man looked quite pitiful, but the factory had its regulations. Outsiders couldn't be allowed in without permission. "Let him in." Right at this moment, a melodious voice appeared from the side. Did he come to Master Benjamin because of Rachel? A hint of curiosity flashed across Gloria's eyes, and then she followed them in too. She would come to inspect the factory every other day. The trench coat's popularity had made blue suede fashion famous. It was now the top fashion brand in the wealthy ladies' social circle in Chaos City. This brought a great income to blue suede. Although it was already winter, and the thin trench coats were no longer suitable, there were many noble ladies who had placed their orders. Even if they couldn't wear it now, they would be able to wear it in the coming spring when the weather got warmer. Therefore, the factory was still having many orders. Of course, half of the masters were currently manufacturing the thick trench coats. These thicker trench coats that could be worn under the harsh winter winds had already received plenty of pre-orders before they were even put on the production lines. Gloria followed Angus toward the production workshop. She recognized that this was the old man who'd found his long-lost son at Mamie Restaurant's entrance that morning, and Benjamin was Rachel's father. She felt that couple was actually rather sweet. "Please wait here for a moment." The guard made Angus wait at the workshop's entrance as he went to say to Benjamin, "Master Benjamin, there is someone looking for you." "Someone is looking for me." Benjamin, who was making the pattern, was slightly taken aback. He turned to look at Angus at the door, and Angus smiled and waved at him. Although he didn't know him, out of courtesy, Benjamin still got up and walked to the entrance. "You are? Do I know you?" Benjamin asked Angus doubtfully when he got to the entrance. He still couldn't recall who this was even after thinking very carefully. "You do not know me, Mr. Benjamin. But, I know you. I am Beck's father," Angus said to Benjamin full of smiles before he quickly changed his words. "Or, I should say Hadda's father." Benjamin's eyes became cautious immediately as he sized Angus up. His shabby jacket was full of holes and patches. He wouldn't even be surprised if he said he was a vagrant. With furrowed brows, he said, "You are the father that he has found today? Why did you come to look for me?" "Yes. I had been searching for him for 25 years before finally finding him in Chaos City." Angus nodded as he slid his shoes with holes backwards. He sincerely said to Benjamin, "I have to ask you for a great favor today. I have met Miss Rachel this morning. Hadda and her love each other. I would like to respectfully ask you to allow them to be together. Hadda is a good kid, I believe he will take good care of Rachel." "Take good care of Rachel?" Benjamin laughed sarcastically. He pointed at Angus and said in a louder voice, "If he was a physically able person and had a normal family, I would give them my blessings. But, he has physical disabilities, and has to support an old blacksmith who even has problems taking care of himself. He can't even support himself, and now he has a father who can't do anything. Tell me, how is he going to take care of Rachel? If Rachel marries him, she would have to take care of the three of you every single day, and she also has to earn money to support that family. I only have one daughter, and I did all I could to bring her up. Everyone who met her praises her. I want her to marry into a good family and live a respectable life. No matter what you say, I will never agree to their marriage." Angus looked at the determined Benjamin with disappointment. In the past, he did have many assets and could afford a good dowry, but he didn't have even one copper coin in his pocket now, let alone a dowry. It would be good enough if he didn't add on to Beck's burdens. He, too, was a father, so he could understand how Benjamin thought. Who would want their children to suffer? Benjamin's girl is pretty and capable. How can she marry a handicapped man? That's right. There are many of us here who want our sons to marry his daughter, but Rachel has turned all of us down. Benjamin's voice was rather loud, so it quickly attracted many people's attention. Many master tailors even put down their work and went to take a look at the entrance. They were discussing quietly among themselves. Why can't they be together since they love each other? Gloria thought perplexedly as she watched from a short distance away. She had seen Hadda that morning. Even though he had physical disabilities, he didn't take charity from others. He had much more integrity and aspiration than a lot of normal people. And when the two of them gazed at each other, she had even seen what true love looked like. She was a little envious, and at the same time wished to give them her blessing. But, she hadn't expected that Rachel's father would be against them so strongly. Rachel, you need to go and take a look now. Your father is arguing with someone, a female worker, who ran in a rush, said. What? Rachel had a shock, and quickly dashed to the entrance. She saw the deflated Angus, who was standing in front of Benjamin, who resembled a fighting cock that had just won a fight. Father, why did you come here? I had a hard time looking for you. Before Rachel could go forward, a limping figure rushed in. He heaved a sigh of relief after he saw Angus. Then, he noticed Benjamin who was standing at the side. Even though he was shocked, he swiftly respectfully greeted, Uncle. Benjamin coldly said to Hadda, you came just in time. Since your father is present today too, I will make things clear to all of you. As long as I am Rachel's father for a day, I will never allow Rachel to marry you. It will be over my dead body. You'd better give up and tell your father to never come to look for me again. And I forbid you to see Rachel again. Hadda's eyes darkened as he rolled his fingers into fists slowly and then released them helplessly. Father, no matter what happens, I am going to marry Hadda. Rachel dashed forward and grabbed Hadda's hand as she looked at Benjamin determinedly. Benjamin was so angry that his mustache trembled. He pointed at Rachel. You are going to be the death of me. How is he going to provide a respectable life for you? He will only let you suffer for the rest of your life. Is he the one who is going to have the buffet with Rachel? A cripple. Isn't her taste in men bad? Cynthia said as she pursed her lips and sized Hadda up. Yes. He doesn't seem suitable for Rachel at all. What is she thinking? The female workers wondered too. I guess she was enticed by that one meal and lost her way. She would be laughed at if she married a cripple. It isn't respectable at all, Cynthia said with a hint of jealousy. The female workers were all talking about it and waiting to watch a good show. Why does a woman have to depend on a man to be respected? Couldn't she earn it for herself? Right at this moment, a curious voice spoke up from the side. Find the method to remove the curse. Gloria, who had been watching silently at the side, stepped forward gradually with a smile and said to Rachel, I have seen Miss Rachel's sewing skills. They have already reached the level of a master. I have specially come to sign a new contract with her today. Furthermore, I have great hopes for her. I believe she could have a very respectable life with her own hard work and skills. The surroundings quieted down immediately. Everybody was looking at Gloria in disbelief. All the masters in the factory were old masters with at least 20 years of skills. Even if they were not famous master tailors, their skills were impeccable. But Rachel was just over 20 years of age, and she had only done some sewing the corners work previously. Although her skills were slightly better than the usual female workers, she simply wasn't senior enough to become a master now, right? How could this be? Cynthia was full of disbelief. Becoming a master meant having a minimum salary of 10,000 copper coins, and the job was much easier. A female worker only earned 3,000 copper coins despite working much harder. Although they were both workers, she had joined 1 month earlier than her, so how could Rachel become a master? Rachel also looked at Gloria in a shock. She felt she must have heard it wrongly. Benjamin was a little stunned too. His kind boss had just said something that he didn't comprehend fully. Smiling, he said hesitantly to Gloria, "Miss Gloria, are you saying that you want Rachel to be a master?" "Yes." Gloria nodded. Benjamin shook his head rapidly, and said, "No, this simply will not do. She is just a little girl, how can she be a master? Her skills are not accomplished yet. If she mishandled the clothes, it would damage Blue Suede's reputation. This simply isn't feasible at all. Furthermore, she is so junior, how could she be a master?" All the masters were looking at Gloria too. Promoting such a young girl to their level had indeed made them feel a little uncomfortable. "In Blue Suede, all I care about is your capabilities. I don't care how long you've joined the company for. I will pay you according to how capable you are and how much value you can generate for Blue Suede. This is a fair deal," Gloria said to Benjamin and the other masters before landing her gaze on Rachel. "For someone with Rachel's capabilities, it's a waste of talent to let her remain as a worker. Hence, there's nothing wrong with me promoting her to the rank of master, because I believe she can generate more value for Blue Suede." Gloria's gaze turned to the female workers, and she smilingly said, "Of course, if any one of you is as outstanding as her, please continue your good work. Let me see your capabilities, and you will be the next new master." After a moment of silence from the female workers, a round of applause erupted from them, and an unusual sparkle glowed in their eyes. There were tears glistening in Rachel's eyes. Choking, she said to Gloria, "Miss Gloria, I believe in my judgment and your capabilities." Gloria looked at Rachel smilingly before looking at Hadda. "I shouldn't have interfered in your family matters, but someone told me before that as long as I am capable, a woman can make a living by herself and doesn't need to obey anyone." Rachel nodded with conviction. She held Hadda's hand tightly, and said to Benjamin, "Father, I will have a respectable life with my own capabilities. I want to marry Hadda and I believe we can make our lives respectable together. We will not be impoverished. Uncle, I am a blacksmith. I can support both my father and master with my hands. I will not drag Rachel down," Hadda promised to Benjamin solemnly as he held Rachel's hand tightly. "That's good enough, old pal. Your daughter will be earning more than you in 2 years' time. She alone can let her whole family live respectably." "That's right. We, the old fogies, had worked for our entire lives, and we're no different from this little girl now. This young man is not bad, either. He will be nice to your daughter." The old tailors had changed their attitudes, and began to talk him out of his disagreement. Benjamin looked at Hadda and Rachel, who were holding theirs together tightly, with a frown. He sighed loudly after a long period of silence. "Since you are so stubborn, I shall not bother with you any more. But you have chosen this yourself today, don't ever blame me for not stopping you in the future." Then, he turned and went straight into the workshop. Surprised smiles appeared on both Rachel and Hadda's faces simultaneously. Then, they hugged each other tightly. The crowd also smiled before they dispersed. This seemed like a rather good ending. Angus, who was standing at the side, also had a relieved smile on his face. Gloria also walked toward the workshop with a smile. She didn't disturb the couple who had just gone through their biggest obstacle. She thought, if Mr. Mag knew about this incident, would he think that I have done a good job? Under the boundless sea realm at the south of the Demon Islands, there was an area of sunken ruins. In the middle of that ruin was an altar. A sorcerer in black robes was holding a blue crystal ball as he piously chanted, "Supreme God, please guide our tribe out of the fog and create a new era." There were numerous merfolk below the altar. They had a human upper body, but instead of legs, they had a tail like a fish. They used seashells and seaweeds to cover their abdomens and breasts. They all gazed at the altar piously. Right at this moment, a strong blue light burst out of the crystal ball, and scenes began to play out right above the altar. That was a scene on the land. It was a huge city, a big square, massive crowds. The scene finally stopped at a restaurant and a man standing in front of it. It has been 1,000 years. The Supreme God has finally answered our prayers again. This is the opportunity for our Atlantis to return to the continent. And this place and this man are the crucial clues to lifting the curse on us, the merfolk, the man in black robe said agitatedly as he stared at the frozen scene. The entire ocean seemed to be excited too as sounds of cheering could be heard. The man in black robe kept the crystal ball slowly as he said in a deep voice, "Wake Gina up. She will bear the hope of Atlantis and proceed to the continent to seek out the method to undo the curse." A crystal coffin raised up gradually from the middle of the deep ocean. In it lay a beautiful mermaid. A merman stepped forward, and worriedly said, "Great sorcerer, Gina is still not able to survive on the land for a long period of time. If we let her go on the land now, she could die. It will be her utmost honor to die for Atlantis." The man in black robe's voice reverberated through the ocean. He waved his hand lightly, and the crystal coffin's cover disappeared. The mermaid in the coffin opened her eyes gradually too. The man in black robe pointed at the disappearing scene, and shouted, "Gina, find him. Find the method to remove the curse." The restaurant was going through its upgrades secretly. Almost no changes could be seen on the exterior, but nobody knew that there were many scary cannon barrels hidden in that chimney. The system had retrofitted the restaurant with the first type of equipment that could defend itself from attackers and counterattack. However, the activation requirement was that it had to be attacked first. Mag didn't really mind that, as he was already at 7th tier. The only issue was that he couldn't use his power in public. Hence, if there were stupid troublemakers who dared to touch the restaurant, these several missiles would be enough to make them suffer. Of course, Mag was really excited about the next upgrade of the restaurant because the system has said that once the restaurant reached LV8, it would make a Sky Garden restaurant available. Although there weren't any detailed descriptions, the words Sky Garden were attractive enough. As for that chance to upgrade and retrofit, Mag had decided to keep it and not utilize it for the time being. Chaos School. The principal's office. A teacher from the administration office faced Novan, who was sitting behind the desk, and hesitantly said, "Principal, the new school building was completed according to the request, and we are entering the stage of recruiting the additional teachers required. However, some teachers have different ideas about the usage of the new building. They believe the new children and teachers should familiarize themselves with our school at the old building first. The money that was used to build the new school building came from Teacher Luna's foundation. Moreover, this foundation was established to give those children who don't have a chance to sit in a classroom a chance to do so. Who do you think deserves to attend classes in the new building?" Novan, who raised his razor-sharp gaze, asked that teacher. That teacher shivered, and quickly said, "It should be those children." Novan continued, "Since the building was already completed, we should hasten on the recruitment of teachers. But, we should be very strict on the review mechanism and process. I will still be the examiner of the final interview round. We have to find responsible teachers for the children." "Yes." That teacher swiftly nodded again. "Additionally, since the administration office is in charge of collaborating with Teacher Luna's foundation, please do a good auxiliary job and help Teacher Luna count the number of children and demands. It is your mission to make sure that every child can attend classes in Chaos School." "Yes." That teacher nodded and left the principal's office. These old fogies. Instead of doing research on knowledge, they began to research the old and new school buildings. Novan shook his head as he took a register book of teachers from the bookshelf behind him and began to flip through it. The city lord's castle. Luna took out a folded registration form and passed to Vivian. Smiling, she said, "Vivian, the Chaos School has begun a new round of teachers' recruitment. I have brought you a registration form. Fill it up quickly and then send it to the registration point. You could become a teacher at the school soon. Really? Vivian's eyes lit up as she took the registration form. She read through it carefully and hugged Luna. She happily said, "It's great, Luna. I will be a teacher at Chaos School too." Luna tapped Vivian's forehead helplessly with a smile, and said, "No. This is only a registration form, and not an admission letter. You still have to go through an exam and the interview round with Principal Novan before you can become a true teacher. It's fine. Given my capabilities, I will definitely pass the exam. There won't be a problem at the interview, either, as Principal Novan is super nice to me. Therefore, getting this form means I am going to be Chaos School's teacher. For sure." Vivian laughed confidently before she curiously asked Luna, "But Luna, doesn't Chaos School always conduct its teachers' recruitment at the end of the year after the students go for their holidays? Why is it conducted so early this year?" "Because the new school building was already completed. The children will be able to start school earlier this year to learn some basics as long as we can find suitable teachers. This is also beneficial in helping them to blend into Chaos School." "So that was the case." Vivian nodded thoughtfully. With a laugh, she said, "Aren't you envious that the children that I am going to teach in the future are those whom you have helped? You'd better spend your time reading on the test questions. If you fail to pass the test, you can forget about becoming a teacher." Luna laughed with exasperation before she continued in a more serious tone, "And, although Principal Novan is very nice to you usually, he is very principled when it comes to selecting his teachers. If he believes that a person can't teach the children properly, regardless of who you are, you will not pass the interview. You'd better think through properly if you are ready to be a teacher." Vivian looked at Luna silently for a moment before she stopped smiling and nodded seriously. "I have been thinking about what I can do since my body began to recover. Finally, after much thought, I would still like to spend my time together with the children. In the past 10-odd years, I have never felt much energy and happiness, but when I am with the children, I may be able to get back what I have lost from them. I guess this will be a happy and interesting matter." "Excellent, then you shall prepare for the test now," Luna said smilingly. Then, she retrieved a stack of papers from a bag, and said with a blink, "These are past year questions and they are not available to the normal people. Do them once diligently and ask me if you have any questions." "Ah! Although you mean well for me, are you treating me as your student? It's such a huge stack of papers, and you expect me to do them all? I hate you." Vivian looked at Luna with a pained expression. Luna held up her fists as she encouraged, "Nothing worth having comes easy. Go for it. You are the best." Vivian changed the topic, and excitedly asked Luna, "Did anything romantic happen on the long journey to Rodil with Boss Mag? Isn't your grandfather rather impressed with him? Did he profess anything to you? There were so many people sitting on the flying magic beast and we reached Rodil within a day. Nothing could happen." Tisk, tisk. Why do I sense a tinge of regret? You're asking for a beating, ha ha ha. I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Stop tickling. Ha ha ha. Madam, are we really going to carry out Plan S this time? This doesn't seem like a good idea. Under the night sky, a giant bat slowly glided into Chaos City. A black-robed figure followed her silently as it whispered, "What's not good about it? In order to come up with this perfect Plan S to obtain Miss Gloria, I have spent over a month's time in the castle. Now this plan is complete, and it's the time to execute it." "But, Miss Gloria is the young mistress of Moraton, after all, and is even the heir presumptive of the Moraton family. Given their family's status in Chaos City, if you decide to use force, the City Lord's castle and Grey Temple would not stand by and watch. This is still Chaos City, the Black Cat said with hesitation. Force? Ah, I have never used force on women. That is only a lousy method used by those useless men. There's no point to obtaining a person's body, I want her heart. Countess Bartoli smiled sinisterly as she landed on the roof of a 3-story building. She gazed at the big manor far away and licked her sexy red lips. With a smile, she said, "This plan S is not for show only. I have prepared myself for multiple failures before I would obtain such a beautiful and talented young lady." "You used force numerous times before," the black cat mumbled. "What are you saying?" A whip appeared in Camilla's hand as she looked at the black cat with an unfriendly expression. "I said you would definitely win the lady's heart," the black cat said rapidly in shock as all the fur on its body bristled. "Excellent. I think so too." Camilla nodded in satisfaction before keeping the whip away. "The first step shall begin with a lullaby. Every woman would love to fall asleep in their lover's song. I suppose Miss Gloria will be no different," Camilla said to herself softly. With a gentle tap of her foot, she landed on a roof that was dozens of meters away and started to dash toward that manor. "Is that really so?" The cat had doubt in its voice, but it still continued to follow behind her silently. An exquisite small courtyard within the Moreton Manor. Gloria was trying to sleep as she lay on her bed. Her mind kept replaying that scene from the evening. As long as the lovers stayed together, they could overcome any obstacles in their way. That kind of emotion was simply too sweet. It made people envious. She had never dared to dream of being in love for the past 10-odd years due to the mark on her face. Until the appearance of Mr. Mag. He had used the delicious tofu pudding to remove the mark on her face, and told her that there were many things to try and choices to be made in life. He was just like a light that shone into her heart. She was no longer the cowardly girl, and yet she was still the same, gentle, courteous, learned, understanding. "Ah, my lovely girl, have you ever thought of me?" Right at this moment, an eerie voice suddenly appeared outside her window. Gloria had a shock, and twisted her head to look toward the window. A figure with long hair hung upside down at the window in a weird and horrifying posture which looked even more scary in the dark night. "Ghost!" Gloria screamed in a shrill voice. Thud! A soft thud sounded as Camilla, who was hanging by the window, fell down. "Ayo! Miss Gloria! It's not a ghost. It's me." Camilla stood up by supporting herself with the window. The window shut close and bolted up just as she was about to poke her head in. Camilla looked at the tightly shut window with a complex expression. She opened her mouth, but she couldn't make a sound. "Let's go now, madam." "Someone is coming," the black cat urged with a hint of haste in its voice. Trespassing in a private manor was a huge deal, furthermore, madam's motive was so impure. If they were discovered, they wouldn't be let off the hook easily. Camilla gazed at the tightly shut window sadly. Even though she had 10,000 methods to break open this wooden window, she chose not to do it. She heaved a sigh before she transformed into a black fog and disappeared from the small courtyard. "Little Black, you could see how perfect my entrance was, how beautiful my singing was, and how romantic I looked when I was singing. Why would she think that I was a ghost? Any normal person would react like her if they saw a long-haired woman hanging upside down by their window at night," Little Black mumbled. "Say it again." "Tonight's moon is so bright." "Gloria, what's going on? What happened?" Lance, who was the first to rush into the courtyard, asked nervously from outside. When he saw Deborah come in, he immediately urged, "Go in and check on the child." Deborah, too, quickly went over and knocked on the door as she nervously asked, "Are you all right?" "Don't be afraid, it's me." "Open the door, child." Mickey walked over as he rubbed his eyes sleepily, and tensely asked, "Is big sister all right?" After a moment, the door cracked open. Deborah quickly walked in and closed the door. "Mother!" Gloria rushed into Deborah's arms. Her body was still shaking. "Don't be afraid, Mother's here." Deborah hugged Gloria quickly and began to rub her back to soothe her as she consoled her. Only after she had calmed down did she gently ask, "What was it, child? Did you have a nightmare?" Gloria pointed toward the window as she said, "There. There was a figure hanging upside down earlier. She was singing too, a figure hanging upside down." Deborah was shocked. She turned to look at the tightly shut window. She didn't see anything, so she hugged Gloria and continued to console her. "You may be hallucinating because you are too tired recently. You will be fine after a good night's rest." Gloria furrowed her brows as she shook her head, and said, "It was not a hallucination. But, her singing was horrible. Although it was a little scary, now when I recall it, I feel a little like laughing. Mother will sleep with you tonight. Relax, she won't appear again." Deborah released Gloria with a smile. She went to the door and waved to her husband and son standing in the courtyard. "You guys can go back to sleep first. I will sleep with Gloria tonight. Is she all right?" Lance was still a little worried. "It's nothing. I will tell you more tomorrow." Deborah nodded before closing the door again. She pulled Gloria back onto the bed. "Let's go. We shall go back to sleep too." Lance shivered. He ran out in a hurry without even putting on a jacket. Since Gloria seemed fine, he walked out of the courtyard with Mickey. "Madam, the first step of Plan S has failed, and it could even have caused psychological trauma to Miss Gloria." "What shall we do now?" the Black Cat asked Camilla. "This failure is purely accidental. But it's fine. A single failure doesn't mean anything. Plan S is a perfect plan, and it will not stop just because of a tiny failure." A confident smile appeared in Camilla's lips. "The way to a woman's heart is through her stomach. And I am that person for Miss Gloria. May I ask what you intend to do now?" "Of course I am going to procure the freshest and sweet blood for Miss Gloria.